welcome to the March 25th meeting of the Portland City Council. Would you please call the roll?
Fritz, Fish, Saltzman,
Here.
Novick,
Here.
Hales.
Here, Commissioner Fish is away. I expect that Commissioner Fritz will be joining us. So we have some time certain items and up fairly shortly, but first we'll do communications and then we'll talk about the rest of the agenda. So item 289, please.
Request of Carl Wickman to address council regarding Portland Bureau of Transportation maintenance of Cedar Crossings Bridge.
Good morning, welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, Commissioners. Could we waiting to switch to the PowerPoint?
You got some slides?
This is Oregon's equivalent to the National Historic Register. Since opening, Cedar Crossings has been a gathering place. I met a woman who'd often go to the bridge with her grandpa. For a science fair project, they created a popsicle bridge model. Now that woman is a highway engineer. Tourists make it a must-stop on covered bridge tours. Last week, oh, that's not good. Last week, Portland police advised me to be careful, as the bridge has become a battle turf for gangs. Drive-by shootings are common. Bullet holes are now claim markers for gang turf areas. This is what the view looks like through a bullet hole. Just 2 years ago, graffiti was chalk and Sharpies. Today, you'll find a Nazi swastika and a target range, but the historic marker remains respected. Under the bridge is a no-gang area, or a no-go area by the Portland Police. And here's some of the tools that the graffiti artists are using. Almost the entire 1930s WPA stonework is now covered with graffiti, many layers deep. A lack of regular street cleaning creates dangers. Where's the shoulder? Traffic goes into oncoming lanes to avoid it. Clogged basins create flooding. Even Portland's finest take evasive action. Potholes reveal the wood deck below. On the lower left is what the understructure of the bridge looks like. On top of that is the asphalt covering. Sidewalk flooding causes severe wood rot and mold. The interior walls are disappearing. You can see that in the middle left. Railing disintegrating. Whoops. Failing abutment patches and shattered guardrails. The footings in the water are now scour critical and failing. Since Mayor Clark's whoop-whoop days and Mayor Hill's term as a commissioner, many plans and promises have been kept. Goal 5 states programs shall be provided that will protect historic areas for future generations. I have not been able to find a plan for this area. Located in Site 20, Cedar Crossings is a Goal 5 designated resource. A citywide scenic plan includes Cedar Crossing. Mr. Mayor, with Cedar Crossings' proximity to 3 parks and metro open spaces, please consider making Cedar Crossings a park area. Our 2015 plans include former Sheriff Don Clark suggesting becoming a part of the Problem-Oriented Policing Conference. Today's presentation will be part of the video documentary. Awaiting word from Commissioner Novak on how to replace the wood rail. Chet Orloff suggests an interpretive display at Leach Gardens, and our 18th annual cleanup is the first weekend of May. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for the update. There's obviously some pretty serious problems to be addressed, so thanks for calling them to our attention.
You're welcome.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Wickman, Laura Hanson, my constituent services coordinator, has been talking to PBOT about the issues you've raised, so you feel free to drop in and talk to her about it as you go.
Is that the lady I talked with last year?
I don't know. I don't know.
She was the lady who went to Hawaii to get married, right? Last
No,
week?
that was Erica.
All right, good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Carl. Thank you very much. Okay, item number 290.
Request of Hector Laura Cervantes to address council regarding illegal operation and charges of treason in the state.
Okay, Mr. Cervantes? Not here? Okay, let's move on to the next one, please.
291, request of Neil Walker to address council regarding interactions with Portland Police.
Good morning, welcome.
Morning, sir. Good morning, Mayor Hales, Commissioner Novick, and Commissioner Saltzman. My name is Neil Walker, and I appreciate you giving me a chance to share my experience. And I've been struggling to come in somewhat formal, and Maya said I could show up authentically. So I wanted to share my story with emotional balance and housing. And you had discussed a need to also hear affirmations for my interactions with the police force. So I wanted to comment on where I am, or where I was, where I am, and where I'm going. So where I was on February 9th, had an emotional dam break, and through a fairly unregulated emotional experience, Project Respond in Portland Police had discussed with me how I had been out in the Northwest 23rd and Burnside area for 4 hours and had showed concern that I was not fully present. So I wanted to share that experience that Project Respond, again, and Portland Police have been very supportive in my sometimes emotional unregulation.
Good.
So with that, I wanted to mention that Wendy Ham, Officer Wendy Ham, last spring had done an outstanding job with sensitivity, professionalism, and support, as well as Project Respond and the Portland Police, as I discussed where I was. Where I am today, very humbly saying that I'm houseless. And as far as emotional regulation goes, I'm in counseling for complex PTSD with EMDR therapy in mind and trauma recovery exercises. And where I'm going is I'm hoping to reduce my hypervigilance and my inner critic, and to increase my self-compassion. And housing, I'm anticipating getting some acute employment in the food and beverage industry, and then Cascadia is sponsoring me to, or sponsoring a housing opportunity in an apartment for 1 month's paid rent, to the best of my knowledge. And then I want to say that the town of Stevenson, Washington, and specifically a cashier named Charlie, had been very supportive in my journey throughout the years, and so I thought I would say thank you for the opportunity again, Commissioner Fritz.
I apologize for being late. I was talking with Senator Betsy Johnson on this at the state level.
And then Dana had made a great quote about keeping your mouth quiet when needed. So I think I'll finish with that. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, we're glad to hear you're doing well. And I'm glad to hear that folks like Project Respond and Cascadia and Officer Ham have been reaching out and giving you a hand when you need one. So we appreciate both you sharing your progress and the folks that have been doing their jobs.
I think sometimes that the police and Project Respond, I think, give me a lot more leadway sometimes than is necessary. However, because of that support, I've been able to take an inventory of my growth and emotional wellness.
Good to hear. Well, yeah, you take care, and we appreciate hearing from you. And whenever you do need help from those folks, you know how to reach help now, and that's good.
I'm coming back in May and wanting to share a possible link between PTSD and housing. It'd be nice to see some progression on my part, see if something can be done within the community concerning housing, which I hear is an aspiration of yours.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
As it happens, right now, Commissioner Saltzman's staff and my staff are meeting upstairs with folks from Project Respond and Central City Concern, and looking at ways to provide more housing options for folks that have had mental health crises and need to get stabilized. So your experience is informative to that good work.
Appreciate it. And then also I had a really grounding conversation with Mr. Mubarak from R2D2. And I think he struggles with that issue also. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Great. Well, thank you. You take care. Good to see you.
Thanks for not asking any questions.
Thank you. Okay, item 282.
Request of Benjamin Barber to address council regarding gender discrimination, segregation, and the change to Oregon Constitution.
Good morning.
Thank you for giving me a little bit of your time.
Sure, thanks for coming.
So I'm not sure if you guys know there was like an amendment to the Oregon Constitution that passed in November. And it basically says that there's not supposed to be any sort of discrimination even for benevolent reasons. It's basically strict, right? Well, the tech community and Portland in general seems to have a lot of this sort of extreme feminism. And it's even to the extent where they have fights against each other in public and on the internet, and it's really quite embarrassing. But I've noticed that it's gone to absurd extremes where people have been, including myself, retaliated against for simply questioning the scientific basis of their beliefs. And they've actually started having segregated women-only events in the tech community. And, you know, I see things like Chick Tech and Girls Incorporated, and I say to some of the members in our community, you know, this is really sort of not fair to exclude maybe extremely poor black children because they're not girls, but they need access to the services. And ultimately, it's about poverty and alleviating poverty, not targeting people because of their race, sex, gender, or whatever. And I generally find this whole identity politics to be toxic in its entirety for both parties, both sides involved. And I've seen this kind of boil over in Portland, this town that I've grown up in. And, you know, I'm not going to waste a whole bunch of your time. I have basically some papers I'm just going to collate and turn into your office. I know that there's some laws in the city. I hope that this is a awakening to people that, you know, we shouldn't be discriminating, and we should just be providing equal opportunities to people regardless of their background. Incidentally, I also talked to some people from the PDC who are doing some like 5-year plan. I go to these plan meetings to talk to them and stuff. And nowhere in the list of metrics was the actual core performance statistics, like how many dollars are spent per job created, what's the average revenue of these businesses afterwards. Like all of their metrics seem to touch on the emotional keel and the emotional levels, not so much on the core problem of, like, for instance, I would say, providing the ability for people to produce value and work even if they don't have a job. So like that, for instance, would help members of the people of color and women who don't necessarily have years of experience to get apprenticeships or to get these skills in an agnostic way. But PDC seems to think that being more politically correct than scientifically correct is more important or something. I don't get it. Thanks for your time. I'll collate these and provide them to the clerk.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Take care. Okay, item 293.
Request of Annie Neal to address council regarding Multnomah County Family Violence Coordination Council, request for continued support for Portland Police Family Services Division support.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you for making the time for us today. My name is Annie Neal, and I'm here on behalf of the Multnomah County Family Violence Coordinating Council. I am joined by Haley Purcell. She's the program manager for Portland Women's Crisis Line, one of the victim service agencies that's a member of the council. One of the council's key roles is to identify issues and provide input on policy and resource needs. Today, I want to talk to you about the need for the ongoing support of Portland Police Bureau's Family Services Division. This past fall, you approved the mayor's supplemental budget that included funding for 2 officers and a sergeant to focus on enforcing domestic violence restraining orders, including some gun dispossession orders. Thank you for that support, and especially thank you, Commissioner Saltzman, for bringing that need forward. On behalf of the council, we're asking you to make this a permanent, ongoing investment in Family Services Division. Domestic violence is the most prevalent form of violent crime in the city of Portland. It makes up more than 40% of all reported violent crime and more than 1/3 of all aggravated assaults. It's also unfortunately the cause of more than 1 in 4 homicides in Portland. National data also tells us that domestic violence is the most common type of repeat victimization, and that there are specific risk factors that we can recognize and address to reduce these incidents of repeat violence. 2 of the biggest risk factors for further violence and for potentially lethal domestic violence are violations of restraining orders and access to guns. In fact, when domestic violence perpetrators have access to guns, the risk of domestic violence homicides goes up 600%. In communities where enforcement of restraining orders and gun dispossession laws are in place, domestic violence homicides decrease 12 to 13%. This specific funding has allowed Family Service Division officers to provide additional intervention and follow-up investigation in the cases with these risk factors, in addition to the great work that they're already doing in other cases involving serious domestic violence crimes. Since this project started this fall and through early March, the sergeant has reviewed 560 additional police reports for violations of restraining orders and 112 restraining orders for non-compliance with gun dispossession requirements. At least 136 cases have been referred specifically for the gun dispossession non-compliance, and the officers were able to identify and work with other public safety partners. There were 24 cases where offenders were already under supervision with the probation department, and 29 other cases where charges were already pending in the district attorney's office. They've made at least 12 arrests and seized a handful of weapons, so the work is really doing great stuff. This funding supports a strategy to identify the cases that we really need to pay attention to. By identifying these specific cases and providing the resources needed to intervene as soon as possible, we are reducing repeat violence and hopefully can prevent serious violence and death. In fact, the Sheriff's Office has been really interested in this model and is making a program request to also fund a Sheriff's deputy to do this same work. The Family Services Division is a unit you should be really proud of. Over the past 20 years, they've learned a lot about high-risk domestic violence, and they've been on the leading edge of developing expertise to recognize and respond to high-risk cases. A couple weeks ago, the U.S. Department of Justice Office on Violence Against Women was in town to celebrate our community's successes in reducing domestic violence, and they were especially interested in the work that Family Services has done and have requested some follow-up information. So please continue to support them. Please expand their capacity so they can continue to do this meaningful work, and thank you for your time.
It's timely to have you and Ms. Purcell here, because obviously we did make that investment last year. I appreciate hearing the numbers. Obviously, Captain Rodriguez and others from the Police Bureau will be, letting us know how it's working from their standpoint. But appreciate the kudos from the U.S. DOJ. But actually, these numbers that in terms of Part 1 crimes were down in almost every category except for sexual assault and domestic violence.
Right.
So, and lately, gang violence incidents are way up as well, and those three tend to have some correlation with each other.
They do.
So if you look at where the problems are in public safety in the city, we've had 30 gang violence call-outs, over 250 shots fired. We've had an unfortunate, again, all the other Part 1 crimes are declining, but not rape. And then domestic violence is still pretty serious. So I think that focusing on this, as you urged us to do, Commissioner Salzman, turned out to be exactly where we ought to be putting extra effort.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for being here, and I also want to thank Captain Rodriguez for his tenure at Family Services Division. He's done some great things, and he's moving on to be head of the Professional Standards Office. So we appreciate all your service, and thank you both for being here today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Other questions while we've got these two? Thank you both very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the regular calendar. We have a pretty crowded council agenda today, both morning and afternoon. We have a series of time-certain items this morning and a relatively brief consent calendar in which one item has already been pulled to regular, which is number 304. There's only one left, so anyone want to pull 305? If not, then let's vote on the remainder of the consent calendar, which is, actually it's longer than that, it's 5 items. Yeah. So the remainder of the consent calendar, unless there are any other withdrawals, let's take a roll call on that, please.
Fritz.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Novick,
Hi.
Hales.
Aye. Okay, now let's move to item 294.
Accept the City of Portland Comprehensive Annual Financial Report for fiscal year ended June 30, 2014.
Mr. Rust. Morning.
Good morning, Mayor Hills and members of the City Council. For the record, I'm Ken Rust. I'm the city's Chief Financial Officer, and I'm the Director of the Bureau of Revenue and Financial Services. Today, we're presenting to you for your acceptance the city's Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, or CAFR, for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2014. We've distributed copies of the printed CAFR to you, which looks like this, and it's also available to citizens on our website for their review. Before I get started with the presentation of the document, I'd like to acknowledge the fact that we now have a new city controller and accounting division manager who has joined me this morning, Michelle Kirby. Michelle is a certified public accountant and has more than 25 years of governmental accounting, auditing, and financial management experience. Prior to coming to the City of Portland, Michelle worked for the City of Phoenix, Arizona in different capacities, but the most recent being Deputy Finance Director and City Controller. So we're really happy to have Michelle here to lead the accounting division team. We have lots of work for her, and she's very happy to be out of the sun, she tells us. In terms of other acknowledgments, as you can imagine, putting together the city's CAFR is a pretty big undertaking each and every year, and it involves many different individuals. And I want to recognize the hard work that goes into the publication and preparation of this document. Certainly, we have city bureaus that are involved bringing in accounting information into the document. The city auditor's office is responsible for managing a lot of the work in the contract with Moss Adams, our independent auditor, and the work that they do, and that's a critical part of the preparation process. And of course, the accounting division staff within my bureau plays an integral role in putting the document together. This most recent CAFR preparation was more challenging for a couple different reasons. First, this year, we actually implemented some new software called Caseware, which will help in the publication of the document. And anytime you implement new software, it takes a little bit more of an effort. And we also had some turnover in the leadership positions of the accounting division that made it further challenging. So this was a difficult year, but we got the CAFR done sooner than we had expected, and with great results. And I want to give some special accolades to the folks that really helped make that happen. First, Satish Nath, the director of the city's Enterprise Business Solution team, really helped in the management of this Caseware project and to the production of the CAFR itself. We had a lot of support from OMF's Business Operations Group. Certainly the accounting division's technical accounting team played an integral role in this. And I'd asked the council to acknowledge the hard work of those individuals, and we have some folks here today that I'd like to have stand and be recognized.
Thank you very much. Good work.
Thank you. So what is the CAFR? The CAFR represents one of the two key financial reports that the council either adopts or accepts. Right now, you're working on the budget process leading up to the adopted budget. And the budget tells the council where we plan to go in terms of the expenditure of public funds. And the financial information in the budget document is primarily produced on a cash basis, or how much money we have available in the bank to fund the different programs each and every year. The CAFR, to contrast, tells the citizens and the council where we have been in terms of the expenditures that we've made and how those expenditures and funds affect the city's financial condition. The CAFR presents financial statements for the city's various funds using generally accepted accounting principles, or GAAP, that are promulgated by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, or GASB. So the information is often prepared either on a modified accrual or a full accrual basis, which is a little different view than the cash basis of the budget document. Included in the CAFR document itself is a discussion by management, the management's discussion and analysis of the city's financial condition, which if there's one section of the CAFR to read, that probably gives you the best summary of all the financial information, the changes year over year, and the key things that are going on with respect to the city's financial operations that help you understand really what the document's telling you. It also includes statistical information and trends that are helpful for readers of the document to get a sense of where the city has been in the recent past. So let's talk about good news first. The city's external auditors, Moss Adams, have offered an unqualified opinion as to the fairness and accuracy of the city's financial statements that have been prepared in accordance with GAAP. And that unqualified opinion is integral to the city's AAA bond rating and in fact for all the bond ratings of the city. The city's CAFR complies with state law. City fund balances continue to grow. In fact, for governmental funds, we've increased fund balances by almost $69 million, and the general fund itself, year over year, has increased about $18 million. The city's CAFR has received the GFOA's Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting, and we have received this award from the GFOA continuously for more than 30 years. And the CAFR continues to feature beautiful photographic scenes of Portland as seen through the camera lens of the accounting division's Lois Summers. And if you haven't looked at the CAFR, the pictures are beautiful. The not so good news. Through the audit process, Moss Adams has identified several weaknesses and deficiencies in the city's accounting processes and practices that we will need to address going forward. There have been some compliance findings and there have been some best practice observations that we will be addressing, but none of these audit findings were significant enough to affect their ability to offer the unqualified opinion as to the fairness and accuracy of the financial information presented in our CAFR. I'd like to turn a little bit my attention and time to the more perplexing news, and I know that there was a discussion about this last year when the CAFR was presented. And it really deals around the city's net position and what's going on with that particular measurement. When you look at the city's net position, which includes citywide view, governmental activities, and business-type activities like water and sewer and things like that, our net position totals about $2.3 billion or so. However, the city's net position for governmental activities, which includes the general fund, the transportation operating fund, and the grants fund, continues to decline, and it's been declining for a number of years. In the fiscal year ending 2014, the net position for governmental activities declined by $142 million, and right now, the net position of the governmental activity view has decreased to $212 million total. Next year at this time, I fully expect to tell you that the net position for the governmental-wide view has turned negative. In simple terms, net position declines when expenses exceed revenues on a GAAP basis. We mentioned how we measure and report our financial information. And this can be caused by several different factors, including increases in pension and other similar liabilities as measured under GAAP, increases in bonds payable with no offsetting increase in assets, and then recognition of non-cash expenses such as depreciation that contribute to expenses exceeding revenues on a GAAP basis. So I want to talk a little bit of those three areas to give you some information about what's really driving that and to help you understand what you need to worry about versus what you just need to be watching. Let's first talk about the pension piece. And I know that you understand and have heard quite a bit about the city's unique Fire and Police Disability Retirement Fund program, which is funded on a cash basis. This was a program created by voters in 1948 and reformed under the leadership of Dan Saltzman in 2006. It's always been an interesting anomaly in terms of pension funding and pension plans in the United States. Currently, the unfunded liability for FPDNR, which is reported in the CAFR document, is $2.7 billion. The amount that we are actually placing on our balance sheet today is about $1.4 billion. So not all of it has been recognized on our financial statements as of yet, but that will change. The value of the city's dedicated property tax levy that funds the liability, because we have a voter-approved property tax levy that pays pension and disability costs each year, the value of that on our financial statements is shown as zero. So we get zero credit for the receivable that we have to pay the liability of the pension fund under a GAAP-GASB view.
Why?
Excuse me?
Why?
They don't recognize the future receivable and tax collection as an asset. And so from an accounting point of view, under GAAP-GASB, that simply is not, the revenues are recognized when we receive them, but the value of that over a period of time into the future is not recognized as an asset. That's something that maybe we would have a conversation with the GASB folks about, because this is clearly an outlier, and I'll talk a little bit more about how that's going to affect us going forward. I mentioned that we reformed the fire and police pension system in 2006. All new hires are now in the Oregon PERS system and the OPSRP program. We're funding their benefits when earned as opposed to when they need to be paid. So over a period of time, a long period of time, the system will convert to a fully funded system, but it's going to take a long time until that happens. And it's I'm happy to report that the plan and the reforms are performing exactly as we expected they would. In fact, the most recent levy capacity study, which I think you've received,
Right.
shows that there's a near 100% probability over the period of time that they looked at, that the FPDNR levy will always be sufficient to pay pension and disability benefits when due. So we made some huge strides in reforming that system and making sure that the cost of the FPNR system does not bleed over into the general fund itself.
Yeah, Sam's here, and we were in this room a month ago getting that report, as the pension board, and, you and I have both been around this issue a while, and it was the first time that we've heard that forecast that we're going to have sufficient resources under the levy, almost with no risk that scenario is the likely one, to pay the responsibilities of the pension system. And what other city can say that? But it was one of those technical reports that flow through here, but it's pretty significant given the risks in the past and the reason why you, Dan, mounted that effort to change some of the fundamentals of this pension system, but it's now really starting to pay dividends.
So I'm really, at this point in time, even though we don't get value for that receivable, because if we were to measure the present value of that revenue stream going forward, we have a $2.7 billion liability. We probably have a $3.5 billion asset in terms of that receivable, but we just don't get to book that. But that's why when people ask me, what do you lose sleep at night over, Ken? I don't lose sleep over FPDNR right now. In fact, I'm much more concerned about the PERS program than I am about FPDNR, because I believe it to be much more volatile in terms of its reliance on investment earnings to stay funded, and also for some of the reforms that have been passed by the legislature, whether in fact they will sustain a legal challenge. But there are issues that we have to continue to monitor about FPDNR, but right now, it's in about the best position it's been in my lifetime here working at the city, and I'm very proud of to be able to say that I think we're in a position now, we're in a monitor mode, and we're not in a worrying mode. So that's one piece of the puzzle about our declining net position, and it's a very significant piece. The other piece is dealing with when we issue bonds that are backed by the general fund and placed on our balance sheet, where we don't have an offsetting asset that we receive with those bond proceeds. So a really good example, we have several of them, but a really good example of that is how we fund the urban renewal program. For urban renewal in all the various tax increment districts, all we can do is incur debt. That's what we're required to do under state law and the Constitution, is incur indebtedness. The indebtedness could be as short as a day, or it could be as long as 20 years. But when we create indebtedness, it sits on the city's balance sheet. The bond proceeds that we receive are given to PDC. And PDC then runs the programs that are part of the adopted urban renewal district. So what do they do with the money? They spend it and invest on business development, in housing programs, in public infrastructure like parks and transportation and other public facilities, property redevelopment, and then administrative costs. And I've talked with PDC about, well, when we give you that money, how much of it might turn back to the city in the form of an asset on our books and records? And they estimate that looking over the last 10 years or so, that maybe 25% might come back to us in the form of an asset. So we incur 100% of the liability, we get 25% of the value back on our books and records. It affects our net position in a negative way. However, the creation of the urban renewal district also gives us access to tax increment revenues based on the value of incremental assessed value in those districts. So we're creating a revenue stream that fully pays the debt service on those bonds. That does not impair our ability to have the general fund pay all the other activities associated with it. So again, kind of an unusual situation. Not everybody, not all urban renewal programs work the same way, but that's the way ours works, and it affects our net position. The last piece of the puzzle is depreciation of capital assets. Depreciation is a non-cash expense that affects the calculation of the city's net position. For fiscal year ending 2014, on the governmental-wide view or governmental activities piece of our CAFR presentation, depreciation totaled $192 million, and transportation was about $159 million of that. During that same time period, in terms of new capital assets put onto the books and records of the city, it totaled about $110 million. So we invested $82 million less than what was depreciated off of our books and records. And if that was the only thing that happened, our net position would have declined by that $82 million. So those are the three major things that are affecting this net position and this net position trend. So what should we do about it? I think that's the most important thing that we can now start thinking about. How can we, is this a problem? How concerned should we be, and what should we be doing? Well, I think we need to continue to monitor, the city's financial condition and health, and provide you more information about what this all means. Part of my Bureau's mission, in fact, one of the reasons why Council, I think, reestablished the CFO position was to do exactly that, was to bring you financial information and to advise you about long-term fiscal health and sustainability. And I plan on bringing back future presentations to you to help you better understand and sort of dissect this net position conversation and what's in and out, and what the view really looks like if we were to take it in account for some of the things that we don't get credit for.
Mr. Rust, it sounds to me from what you said in the last 5 minutes that the thing that you really keep all of us up at night is that the transportation system is falling apart. Is that right?
You beat me to the punchline. But yes, I think our biggest challenge when you take apart these other things, and that's really what's important, is what's really the thing we have to worry about. The thing we have to worry about is infrastructure funding. We've had success in the past with our GO bond measures, both for public safety and for parks. And, that we have kind of an episodic approach to funding those capital needs. When we kind of wait for a few years and then we do a bond measure. And maybe we need to think about that strategy and how we perpetuate that so that we have a more reliable access to that funding tool with the right kinds of projects. We've had council action recently that I think has really been positive. This dedication of 50% of one-time money to capital infrastructure, very important. The council budget, the budget office during their presentation with the capital asset program mentioned that they would like to see a reinstitution of the capital set aside, which we had, and I know Mayor Hales is aware of that, as a way to help dedicate more funds to infrastructure. But obviously, we need to develop and implement a new funding model for PBOT. That's where we're really significantly underinvesting, and that's where if we don't solve that problem, we're really not going to get a handle on our ability to help address the declining net position that's associated with the underinvestment in infrastructure. And the last part that I think we need to pay attention to is how can we develop some sustainability metrics that will help you understand how well we're doing or not, and how do we make sure that as we develop these programs and plans that we pay attention to equity impacts. How we pay for capital, does create impacts on current customers and users and citizens and those in the future. And the one thing we don't want to do is further exacerbate that if we can avoid it. So I think it's that kind of information and thinking that I'd like to share with you and spend more time with in the future to help us figure out what our plans and strategies and policies should be around this particular issue. Setting that aside, there are some other challenges I just want to make you aware of. One of the things that I have mentioned to Michelle and her team, and also working with Moss Adams, is that I believe we need to shorten the time it takes to publish our CAFR. Right now, for the city of Portland, we typically publish the CAFR in mid-December or so. Sometimes it's even later than that. There's an increasing drum beating going on with the Securities and Exchange Commission and with investors that buy municipal securities like what the city of Portland issues, that's way too long of time period. The information is stale. We need more timely information. The private sector turns out a CAFR in 30 days or so. They put out quarterly financial reports. We don't look that way at all. And we know that at some point in time, we're going to be under an increased burden to bring back that publication date. So I've told our team for this next year, for the CAFR that we'll present to you next year, I want to have a publication date of December 1. And in 2016, I want to see that publication date as November 1. That's still longer than what we see in the private sector, but I know we have to move that direction. We have to rethink how we get there, because I know that that's where we're going to be headed, and it's very important for us in our borrowing programs to make sure that we're going to be in compliance before we have to get there. So I like to do things on our terms, not on someone else's terms, and that's a goal and objective that's going to take an effort for us to get there that will involve all of the city accounting folks in the different bureaus as well. We will also be implementing this year GASB 68. It's their latest pronouncement affecting pensions. Now, I mentioned earlier that, for example, on FPDNR, we have a $2.7 billion liability, 1.4 of which is on our balance sheet now. Under GASB 68, all of the liability will be placed on our balance sheet. So what does that mean? Well, you can do the math. We have $212 million surplus right now in the government-wide view. You add another $1.3 billion on top of it, we're going to be negative. So we're going to have this interesting situation where we're a AAA rated city and have been since 1974 with a negative net position on a governmental-wide view of over $1 billion. And it's all being driven by our implementation of GASB standards that don't really take into account very well the unique positive associated with this anomalous pension system. And that's a challenge for us to talk to about investors and make sure that they fully understand.
Well, yeah, and that's not just the $64,000 question, a lot more than that. But do you believe, and does our financial team believe, that the bond market will continue to recognize our fiscal integrity despite that peculiar effect of following the GASB standards? Because we're fiscally sound, we're paying our bills, we have enough money coming in from the tax levy for the pension program to pay its obligations. We operate on a cash basis, our funds are in surplus, there are reasons for that AAA bond rating, and you've recounted them in this report. So the question is, well, once that top line view goes negative in an accounting sense, do you believe the bond market will continue to recognize that Portland is a sound financial organization?
Yes, I do. And the reason why I do is because we've had this discussion with them for many years. The FPD&R liability is not new. We knew exactly what it was. We've explained it to them for years. They fully understand that we have a unique system. We also have a unique way to pay for it that does not impair our ability to fund governmental services. We have strong financial management policies and practices. We have decades of experience managing those liabilities. They know how we approach these kinds of problems. And when we implement GASB 68, nothing has changed other than what we present in the financial report about those things that underpin the credit rating. So I think it's an education process, but those who rate our bonds fully understand that.
Good to know.
And with that, that concludes my remarks. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Commissioner Salzman?
So I was interested in your discussion about the urban renewal and assets.
Mm-hmm.
So if urban renewal pays for a park or a paved road in East Portland, does that get booked as an asset?
If it's ultimately transferred back to the city, it's a city asset. Yes, that portion does come back to us, and that's the approximate 25% of the estimated bond proceeds that we send to PDC. That's what we get back, but it doesn't match one-to-one. That's correct.
But if PDC invests in a commercial project, it's privately owned, and that goes off our books and onto a private property owners. And if the 30% set aside goes out into a housing project, that's privately owned and doesn't show up on our books either. Now, we collect tax revenue for the rest of time from that property, but it isn't booked as an asset to the city of Portland, right? It's owned by this housing provider or that employer or developer, but it's not owned by the city. Have I got that right?
That's correct, Mayor Hales. And I think when we stand back, which this from the CAF review, it sounds kind of odd, and maybe we shouldn't be doing that, but why do we create urban renewal districts? We create urban renewal districts to deal with blight and issues associated with parts of the city that we'd like to see change, with the promise being that by making those investment and changes, that growth and value in terms of property values, jobs, and other indicators of wealth are going to be greater than they would have otherwise been. And in fact, I believe the Auditor's Office has done that kind of analysis and has shown that to be precisely the case. And that's the reason why we do that. And it's an example of where we're going to use our balance sheet to do right, smart things, even if it doesn't necessarily give us the best view from a financial reporting point of view, because those are the things that create value for us today and tomorrow and grow this community and make Portland a better place to live.
All right. Other questions?
I'm interested in which assets are considered saleable and which ones are not. So I noticed that Forest Park is not considered a saleable asset because we're not going to sell it. So that seems appropriate. How does the CAFR decide which things are assets that have value because they could potentially be sold and which ones are not?
I don't know if I can answer the question specific. I'll talk in general. I don't know whether Michelle has a specific response, but if we can't, we'll get back to you on that. We typically assume that we're not going to be selling and monetizing our assets because they provide particular service to us now and going forward. If we decide that an asset is no longer needed, then we have a council practice and policy of how we dispose of what we call surplus property. And it first has to be concluded that, in fact, the property is surplus and can be sold. And that takes a council action to be able to do that. And then we go through the process of selling the property. So generally speaking, we're operating under the assumption that the assets on our books and records aren't going to be sold unless we determine that they are no longer needed and it follows a council decision that it is in fact surplus property.
What about some of the assets like police cars, for example, that we know we're going to be selling it in a few years and we get a certain amount of money for that? Does that go into the books to factor against the cost of a new police car?
Well, on the fleet side, for example, we've been doing this probably for 25 years. We take the cost of fleet vehicles like police cars, and bureaus like the police bureau are charged for the replacement of those vehicles each and every year. And a fund is established to make sure that when the police car is worn out, as we have determined it to be based on how much maintenance it takes or the useful life of the vehicle, that vehicle is surplused out. It's sold for whatever value we can. That money comes back into the fund. But during that time period, the police bureau is receiving an interagency agreement with OMF to pay into a fund to replenish and buy new police vehicles when needed. So we've been doing that for a long period of time. It's a very routine kind of our business operation with respect to fleet vehicles.
So why don't we do that for all of our capital assets, for example, roofs on community centers? We don't have a fund that we pay into that then can replace it.
That's a very good question. It's one of those things, what more can we do to address the timely replacement of our capital infrastructure? We do have reserves on certain buildings. They're probably not where they need to be, and having more money in reserves would be a benefit. It would help us make sure that when needed, we have the ability to do that. It gets more complicated when you start taking larger projects and go, wouldn't it be nice if we say, we just spent $1.4 billion on the big pipe? And we borrowed a lot of money to pay for that, and we're going to pay those bonds off over a period of time. And that helped us lower the cost of the project and make sure that the people who use the project are actually paying for it through our rates and charges. Well, wouldn't it be nice, you could argue that let's take that $1.4 billion and divide it into 20-year segments, and every year put $70 million aside so that coming into the 20th year, we have money to replace it. That would have a very significant increase in sewer rates rather to do that. It may avoid our need to borrow, but it would have a tremendous equity impact at the same time for those people who are currently using the water and sewer system, particularly the lowest income people, to be asked to pay twice for the same system. So there's a balancing act between how much money we should put away, the prudence of putting it away, the equity impacts associated with that. There's not an easy answer in reaching a conclusion. I do know one thing, we need to do more.
You said that some facilities have reserves and some don't. What's the rule for which ones do and which ones don't?
I don't know that there's a rule per se. I think we have some financial management policies that lay out what we would like to do, and it's always kind of aspirational. I think on a lot of the facilities that are managed by OMF, we've tried to establish reserves, and we do have reserves to some degree. Some bureaus have chosen that that's not where they have the resource to be able to do that, so we have inconsistent practice in terms of setting monies aside for that, and it really becomes a resource question, Commissioner, for folks.
I think we had that discussion with OMF in a work session last year, that maybe the answer is to transfer all facilities to OMF and then they would all have reserves, but it seems like we should have a consistent policy. It's in parks, for example, it's not that we don't want to have a reserve to replace the roofs on the community center. We just don't have the money. We can't provide the same level of service with the people that takes up the majority of the parks budget and put aside money, whereas OMF has the authority to charge overhead that then can be put into a reserve. So is there any discussion of having a committee or something to continue the work of those discussions and look at how could we, it doesn't really matter to the public whether the Portland building is owned by OMF or managed by OMF versus the Charles Jordan Community Center being owned and managed by Portland Parks. They're all city assets to the public. Is there work being done to propose a more consistent policy?
I'm not sure what the status of those discussions are, Commissioner, but I can certainly find that out. I know that we continue to do a lot of work with the Capital Assets Management Group, and if this is part of that discussion about how we might make some headway, I think it dovetails nicely into the need to do more on infrastructure funding, taking care of our civic assets and these other kinds of things. And that's part of the discussion that I think is worth having as we move forward about what more should we be doing, what might that look like, and what are the consequences of doing that.
Thank you.
Good. Other questions for Mr. Rust or Ms. Kirby? Great report. Thank you very much. So let's see if there's anyone signed up to speak on this item.
Mr. Walsh requested to
Come on up.
speak.
On this item? Okay, come on up. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice. Commissioner Fritz took a lot of steam out of my sails on questioning, and I appreciate that. I really do. I like commissioners that question reports. One of the, I want to give you an evaluation from a citizen's position. Listening to this report, I don't think that your staff understands that there are people watching this on TV that do not have the report in front of them, that cannot flip through and try to figure out exactly what they're talking about. And that's unfortunate. And I'll give you an example. When I left this morning, my wife borrowed $7 from me. When I go home tonight, she will return that $7. That's a financial transaction. It's very simple. I know where we are. My wife Patty knows where she is. Everybody understands what's involved. Listening to that report, I asked a few people in the audience if they understood what was going on, and they agree with me. They didn't understand it because there is so much that the report is putting out. And I'm always suspicious. If you want to hide stuff, you just send out all kinds of information, and people just glass over, and then it's over, and you guys vote on it, and then it's finished. You need to figure out a way that that person watching it on TV that doesn't have access to what you have, the briefings, the book, the report, all of that, you have that, they don't. We're sitting here listening to this verbatim, and we're trying to figure out where a couple of $2 billion is going. And that report did not fulfill that from a citizen's point of view. Because if I walked out this door right now, I could not explain what that man just said. And that's a problem. Because I'm an activist. I've been here for a while. I'm a little bit more knowledgeable than most people watching this on TV. And if I can't do it, that means they can't do it either. And that's the way I evaluate this stuff. If I don't understand it, and that's a little arrogant, I know. If I don't understand it, I assume that a lot of other people don't. And you need to have reports that are simple, that says, this is what we're doing, this is our credit rating, this is where we are, this is how we fund this is how we fund that, and it's got to be very easy and easy to understand because we're not accounting. Thank you very much for your time and patience.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Watchdog X. As I've stated in the past, I've had concerns on the retirement funds, and I understand, Commissioner Saltzman, you did a reform, and I guess in 2006, but there was still a large outstanding debt, my understanding over $1 billion, and that was always my concern on how that was being looked at. It appears though that debt will come back and maybe have an effect on the bond rating, but it's been stated it won't. I do question that at this time. One of the issues I have is also on the surplus properties. I would like to have a moratorium on any surplus properties pertaining to any real estate until we begin to buy down the debt and have ample funding for transportation, which has been neglected over the last 10 years. In my opinion, when people were doing special allotments of that funding and neglecting the transportation maintenance, there are certain laws in place that they should have not been doing that, and I think that needs to be looked at very close. You need to maintain the current assets in the infrastructure. That should be a top priority, and that was neglected in transportation, and Commissioner Novick unfortunately has this on top of his shoulders on trying to create a way to solve that, and also Mayor Hales. So that is a big concern to me. Again, on the real estate being sold, I do not want to see any real estate assets of the city donated to any nonprofits. I want to have a moratorium set on that we have full appraisal values on these properties, and we get the full appraisal value for these properties. And if the nonprofit wants to acquire these properties, they go to a foundation and submit applications and try to receive a grant, not from the city of Portland. We have too much debt on the books at this time. We cannot be giving these assets away at low values under the current market appraisals, not estimate of values, and not appraisals that are 7 years old, and not certain people thinking they understand the values without having an independent, qualified appraiser doing that, which a bank will look at that appraisal and say, yes, we would even loan money on that based upon that value. We're giving too much money away, and we need to stop that on the surplus properties, and the surplus properties needs to be reformed. It needs to be reformed and have an understanding and have the right information on where this money is going to, especially on the fleets. We want to know how these cars are being sold after the fact, and we want to know how much money is being brought in and where that money is going. And I want to follow this very close and plan on doing that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Anyone else? Yes, right here. Okay, come on up.
Thank you very much, sir.
Just put your name in the record.
Barry Sutton, and I'm almost myself. I guess that doesn't matter. I guess there are people, a couple looking at me, a couple looking down, but I know that I brought up the area in back of Washington High School.
That's not what we're
yes,
here about today.
But it's a possibility then that is being sold to someone to build houses on.
Not at the moment. Not at the moment.
Well, this was my understanding. Possibly it's wrong, and if you want to tell me, that's fine. Because
we can give you some information about that.
Yes, but here is the place to talk about this. Could be used as an encampment for homeless people and take care of all of the people that are living on the sidewalks and stuff like that. And when it isn't, and there's that much land available, that makes me feel bad about my city, the city I live in.
We appreciate you bringing that point. We'll make sure you get some information about that property.
Yes, this has happened before with Dignity Village there, but the people that owned that land were not the city of Portland. It was a transportation department, and they had the people moved off of it. Here is a place 3 blocks for all of the homeless people in Portland, and please don't turn that down. That's a wonderful opportunity. Josh Alpert was a part of an article last week about homelessness. He said he looked all over Portland and he couldn't find a place to move the homeless people into. Well, that is right in our face. You see, it's right in front of us. It's right in the city of Portland that all of these homeless people can be moved to. And I'm very sorry, I can't do anything myself, jump up and down or something, but the last time I spoke before City Council, nobody, Commissioner Fish isn't here, including Commissioner Fish, asked me questions about this or said, oh no, we cannot do that because, please, will you talk with me, converse in this moment.
We will get you information
No,
about that
in this
property.
moment right now.
We've got to adopt this report, Barry, so we can get you information about that property at another time, but not today.
Yes, if I could talk with Josh Alpert.
You call my office. Okay?
But that is a valid place for most all of the homeless.
We hear your point.
But I'll understand that is until I'm explained different.
Okay, we appreciate your point. Thank you.
about this, but please don't overlook that. You mustn't.
We won't. All right, thank you very much.
Okay,
Barry.
I hope so.
You take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Anyone else on this item? Then I believe a motion.
ag-
No, Barry, we got to move
Again,
on. We
in
gotta move
back
on.
of,
We understand. We know where you're talking about. Okay. Any further council discussion before we take a motion? A motion to approve the report, please.
So moved.
Roll call.
Fritz?
Well, welcome to Ms. Kirby and welcome back to Mr. Rust. It's good to know that you both are here, and I certainly appreciate all the work of the staff because this is tremendously complex. I remember making a speech very much like Mr. Walsh's when I was a citizen activist, and I'm really, now that I'm a part of the council, I especially appreciate all of the diligence and look at all of the people who worked so hard to work with to get the CAFR out. And I also appreciate former Controller Jane Kingston for her work on this. Aye.
Saltzman?
Well, thank you for this report. It certainly is, it is dense stuff, but it's important, and it certainly has a lot of ramifications on how we continue to operate as a city, and on a sound basis, despite some of the numbers. So thank you. Aye.
Novik?
I really appreciate the clarity of the report and your spelling out, what numbers look bad and what we should really be worried about and what we shouldn't. And I say that not only because you confirm my view that all we should really be worrying about is the state of our transportation system. Aye.
Hales?
Well, thank you all for an important piece of work, and we have more to discuss on this subject this morning, but the fact that we have this kind of bill of health in terms of our financial condition as a city is amazing and wonderful, and sometimes we take it for granted. I think it's also great that the council engages, as we have here today and otherwise, with our financial staff, not just about important details like what is our asset management approach to police vehicles or parks. Those are important details, but also on the big picture of how are we dealing with these big trends of assessed value growth or the change in the accounting procedures that affects how our pension system is treated, and on the effect of council policy changes that have then turned out to have pretty significant improvements in our financial position. So again, Commissioner Saltzman, the work that you did on the pension system is not just at the pension board itself, but now to the city's overall financial system. So I appreciate both the quality of the work and the quality of the discussion that engenders here. It's always difficult to translate government accounting. I think Mr. Rust and his team do well, given the difficulty of the subject and the rules that we operate under. But I think if you look at this report and if you hear the summary that we've heard this morning, I think it does give our citizens a good picture of how the city is being managed and what our opportunities, assets, and threats actually are. Thank you for the good work. Aye. Okay, let's move on to 295.
Accept the audit of the City Comprehensive Annual Financial Report for fiscal year 2013-2014 and the related communications with those charged with governance, and adopt the management response to correct the deficiency in financial reporting controls disclosed in the audit.
Auditor Caballero, good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. I am City Auditor Mary Hall Caballero. It is my pleasure today to introduce Jim Lanzarota, a partner in the accounting firm of Moss Adams, which conducted the audit of the city's fiscal year 2014 financial statements. The city's financial statements are important resources for community members, taxpayers, investors, and decision makers to understand what fiscal shape the city is in at a moment in time. Once management has prepared the statements, Oregon law and city charter require an independent audit be conducted to determine if the public can reasonably be assured that they fairly represent the financial position of the city. The city entered into a contract with Moss Adams, a licensed municipal firm, to conduct this assessment, and my office oversees that contract. This arrangement ensures that the outside auditors have an extra measure of independence from the managers whose work is being audited. I'd like to acknowledge Director of Audit Services Drummond Kahn and Principal Auditor Fiona Earle for administering the contract and acting as liaisons between the bureaus and Moss Adams. And I will now turn it over to Mr. Lanzarota to walk you through the results.
Good morning.
Morning, Mayor Hales, fellow commissioners. Thanks for the opportunity to come before you. This kind of completes the audit process, so it allows us to follow through with the applicable audit standards that we're to apply, which is, hey, we better report to those that are required to govern this fine city. So this enables me to do that. I'll talk about what it was that you hired Moss Adams to do, and then obviously what were the results. And so when we think of an audit, I like to put it in about 5 phases to it. And the first phase, I think you really have a great understanding of. So we're required to come in and kind of verify whether these numbers are accurate and the disclosures are accurate. So you look at source documents, we talk to third parties, the bank that holds your funds, verify. So that's pretty commonly understood. A second phase is to look at the internal controls, or those checks and balances that management uses to make sure that they can put this document together accurately. So we have an obligation to look at those controls and tell you if there are significant deficiencies in those. Mary mentioned that since you're an Oregon municipal corporation, you're also required to follow quite a few state laws that are unique to cities and governmental entities. And as your auditor, I'm required by state law to then test your compliance with about 7 or 8 specific areas, like legal and budget, your whole budget process and how you do that, public purchasing, the types of accounts that you put cash and investments in, those kinds of things. And I have an obligation to report to you if there were any findings of non-compliance. So that's a third phase. A fourth phase, since you get federal grants, you do very well at obtaining federal dollars to help you provide services here at the city. So that's a big part of your operating budget. Well, when you get federal grants, you also are saying that you have to comply. You agree to comply with certain requirements. And as your auditor, I have to test whether, in fact, you're meeting some of those additional compliance requirements that are unique to those grants and report that to you. And then the last area, as Ken mentioned, you're able to produce this document. It's pretty surprising. There's probably between 80 and 90,000 entities that are required to follow these standards and put this document together, and a majority of them are unable to produce this document with the expertise that they have in-house. So you're very fortunate that you've got quite a cadre of individuals in accounting and finance that have the skills and knowledge to do this. So our job can really be focused on the audit work behind it, verifying that it's accurate and not in the preparation or production of it. So that technical review and assistance to your staff in meeting those requirements. Ken also mentioned the Certificate of Excellence that you submit under the Government Finance Officers Association. There's additional bells and whistles that are pretty significant that you have to incorporate in your financials to achieve that award. So it's a great honor to now be 30 plus years, I think Ken mentioned, in achieving that award. And our review, in addition to the GAAP requirements, looks to make sure that you're meeting those additional GFOA requirements. But your staff does a phenomenal job in meeting the basics plus those additional requirements. So that's what we do, kind of in a way of looking at it. So what were the results? And Ken already took the punchline out. I mean, the best news is on page 21 of this document is our opinion on the financial statements. And Ken mentioned it's an unmodified opinion. We didn't have to modify it for any exceptions to generally accepted accounting principles. So that's a great achievement. You probably take it for granted here now because you've achieved that milestone for many years in a row now, but that's not an easy milestone to maintain. And so very appreciative of the expertise that you have in-house and the policies you've set and the controls you have in place that enable you to put together this document accurately year in and year out. So that's that piece. I mentioned that we have to look at your internal controls and were there any deficiencies? And you might remember that we've had a number of deficiencies that we've brought to your attention in prior years. Most of the time it seems to be centered around capital assets. That's a very tricky area with our governmental clients And again, this year we had just one significant deficiency regarding the Bureau of Transportation, and it really has to do with a timing issue of when they recognize a project in process, a project that takes some time to complete. So they start a project, they're incurring costs. When the project is done, it needs to be transferred to a final capital asset position. In the meantime, it's in a special account where costs get accumulated. And we identified that there are times when there's a lack of communication between the folks that manage these projects and those that have to do the accounting for your financial reporting to know when a project is done and all the costs need to come out of this holding account and into a final capital asset account. So it's a matter of just getting it recognized, and then it's placed in service. You begin recording the depreciation or the wear and tear through depreciation deduction. So it's important to know when an asset is in fact placed in service so you can begin recognizing the cost of its use in your operations. And then there were a few projects where you get started, but for whatever reason, they don't get completed, and those costs need to come out of this construction in progress account. And there were a few instances where, for whatever reason, projects were not completed, but the costs remained in there as if they were still ongoing projects. So there's just some communication and some work that might be done in that area. So that was this year's control finding. All issues we brought to your attention in the past have been resolved, and so that's the only one. So again, I think that shows improvement, and so that's good news. I mentioned these state laws that we're required to test your compliance with, and this year we had no findings. This may be the first year, probably, excuse me, one of the most common types of findings we have with budgets specifically is over expenditures. It's very hard with all the funds that you manage. Invariably, there's somewhere where you overspend the appropriated budget for a particular line item within one of your funds. And this year we didn't, or I should say you didn't have any of those. It's also common to trip up in certain other areas of budget law amongst our governmental clients here in Oregon, and there were none there for you. So really good news on a number of fronts. The deposit of public money, you've met all the requirements there. Public purchasing, we didn't find any non-compliance there. The budget, as I mentioned, insurance elements, and then finally the grants area was the other. And this year, again, probably maybe the first time in many years, we had absolutely no findings with your compliance with grant programs. So great news there. So the administration of the federal grants is done very well. As you know, you're decentralized, you have many bureaus, there's many individuals involved in the administration of your federal grants. And to have compliance throughout the city for the various programs we tested is a great milestone for you to achieve, especially after prior years where we have had a few findings relative to your compliance requirements. And then finally, we did issue a letter to you, which I think is in your packet. We call it a communication to those charged with governance, and I'm not going to go over all of it. Most of that has the elements in it, and hopefully you've had a chance to read it. There's just a couple areas that I might highlight in there. Most of our governing boards want to know maybe a couple things. One is, geez, did we have any audit adjustments? Were there any particular issues? And we did not propose any audit adjustments. So any corrections that were determined to be necessary in closing the books and preparing this document, your staff identified already through their fiscal year-end processes. So we had no audit adjustments. There were a few errors that were immaterial or minor to your financial statements which were not corrected, and those are listed in that letter to you. And again, they relate primarily to capital assets. You might remember that in prior years, we noted a deficiency in controls over certain capital assets the city owns that were not recognized in your books. And in the past, that generally stemmed from properties that were donated to you, and they just didn't get picked up. So parks, for example, has a number of properties that they've received over the years that sometimes don't get picked up and reflected in your financial statements. So they still have a few properties that they're working on getting recorded, but that's what's noted in there. There's a few more properties that they know that they own, and they're not yet booked, and I believe hopefully the rest of that will get on the books in this year, fiscal year that you're in right now. And we don't note that as a control deficiency we have in the past because they've changed their processes now, and the process over that is working. So that will correct itself. Another area that governing boards like to know is, geez, do we have any difficulties in working with management or others in the performance of our work? And we're very pleased to tell you we didn't have any of that. I mean, if, for example, if we're asking questions and we're not getting responses, or if it feels like, you know, we're being directed or misdirected, you know, you'd want to know that. And we've never experienced that. Your accounting staff, and to me, they're very anxious to kind of learn best practices or to work well with us. It's a nice team environment to get through the audit process, and very much appreciate the dedication and effort that they put into that. We've never had difficulties there. We also like to tell you if we had any disagreements. I mean, are there disagreements over the application of accounting standards or any of that? And we're happy to tell you that we had no such disagreements working with your staff. The last item I'd mention is, again, over this, you know, Ken did a phenomenal job, I think, of talking with you about the declining net position. And you'll remember that we brought that issue up and included it in this letter last year. And this year, it's in there, but primarily for the purpose to tell you what actions management has taken. And Ken probably did a pretty good job of that. I think with the pension issue, your biggest weapon is to go out and look at the sufficiency of that property tax on a periodic basis. So it's really good news that the latest round of evaluating that shows a very slim chance that your property tax revenue would be insufficient to cover the benefit payments in the future. So that's phenomenal. And doing that monitoring work is exactly the kind of thing that that seems like would address that risk. So appreciative of management's effort to monitor that and look for that. The capital assets is the other piece, as Ken mentioned, and you know, it looks like you're well on your way. I know you've been working on a dedicated revenue stream for some of this infrastructure, and just being aware of the issue and being supportive of management as they work with you to continue to address that issue is a great start on that problem. So the particular issues there, I think you've got some good direction, and looks like you're well on your way to trying to address that problem. So really those are my remarks. I guess the one last piece I would say, again, it talks to Ken's comment about the timeliness of getting the financial statement prepared. You know, for various reasons, when we were out in September talking to management, I think at that time, they were probably about 4 weeks behind where they wanted to be able to issue the financials by mid-December, which was the plan. And they implemented that new caseware software that Ken mentioned, and they made up those 4 weeks, and we were still able to issue by December 19 or somewhere around there. And so your crew did a phenomenal job of kind of re-engineering the financial close process and producing this document and making up all that time. It's a testament to the level of dedication of your accounting staff to get there. And so we certainly acknowledge their efforts. Just wanted to report that to you. With that, I guess I'd be open to whatever questions you might have.
Questions? Dan, please.
You talk about risk to the financial position of the city, and you talk about the provision of discounts and of the city's accounts receivable. What?
I'm sorry, what document are you looking at?
On page 3.
Of the letter?
Of the letter, yeah. Talks about the most sensitive estimates affecting the financial statements. The provision for discounts and allowances on the city's accounts and loans receivable. So I guess
Yeah,
I'm
okay,
just
the
curious
part,
what
sure.
you're talking about there.
Sure, so you're commenting on this letter, the communication to those charged with governance, and the various topics here that we're required to cover with you. One of them is financial statement disclosures. And so we're telling you here, these are some of the more sensitive financial statement disclosures that you might want to look at. And one of those is just to remind you, you do have estimates. There are estimates in the financial statements. And in the area of your accounts receivable, one of the estimates is what is the portion you won't collect. The appropriate accounting principles are that you may be owed a certain amount, but history tells you not everyone's going to pay their bill. And so the amount you reflect in the financials needs to be net of that estimate of the amount you won't collect. And this is just telling you, hey, there are estimates in there, that receivable and the uncollectible portion is an estimate. And so we're just pointing out that. And then there are other things in here we're pointing out, like, the long-term debt. That's an area that's sometimes a very significant disclosure in your financials. The pension and OPEB programs are significant disclosures. There's nothing positive or negative about this other than telling you where there might be some significant disclosures that you might want to look at in the financials.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions?
Just wondered if either Auditor Caballero or Drummond Carn has further comments.
I do not have further comments. Drummond, do you have any? Okay.
And is the final be it resolved where the city adopts and endorses the city's management response that's referencing Exhibit D? So it's that singular issue with transportation, and that's corrected?
Yeah, I should have mentioned that. I think that is the intent for you to look at PBOT's response. So anytime we have a finding, generally, I think, and it might be actually in the city's code, that you put together a management response to that. What's the plan? So PBOT has done that, and I think the city staff's looking for your approval of the plan that they've put in place.
And I think my reaction to that would be the PBOT director has done what's required. The rest is up to us. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you all. Anyone want to testify on this report? No? Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
For the record, my name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice. That's the kind of report that I was speaking about when I was talking about item 294. That report was a conversation. It's very difficult to have a one-way conversation, but when they gave the report, it was a conversation that we all, at least I understood. I could explain that to you when I was outside this door. So that's what I was trying to point out in 294. And although we criticize, we also have to acknowledge that was an excellent report. And I think the people watching it at home, without the benefit of all the stuff that you have in front of you, could sit there and say, you know what? The auditor's report seems to indicate, whether you believe the report or not, it's another question. But it seems to indicate that we're doing pretty good. We got some minor issues that we have to tweak. That's the kind of report I think the citizens would like to have, instead of all of that other stuff that 294 gave you that just confused the issue. So it's a conversation. It's very difficult to have it one way when you're given a report, but that's the way it should be. And people should be able to understand it, Mayor. You have a lot more stuff in front of you than somebody sitting home having coffee trying to figure out what everybody is saying. And I indicate a lot of times I quote Patty, but when I go home, I ask her, did you understand 294? Did you understand what they were saying? And I'll bet you a mocha that she would say, nope, I don't have a clue what they were talking about. And that, your transparency record is not good. That's one of the reasons, because you sit there and you say, this is a good report, but I have all of this information in front of me, so I understand it. Who cares about the other people? If that's your attitude, Mayor, you're in trouble. Thank you. But again, that's the kind of report that we would like to see. And I congratulate that order.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Watchdog X. One of the concerns I have on these reports and on the auditing process is that when we're talking the assets of the city and we're allowing certain assets to accrual deferred maintenance, that's an interesting area to look at on just how much do we have to come up with to cover those costs, because that's an area that can have this happen and then all of a sudden we have to come up with this large dollar amount, talking about, say, the Portland building, and coming up with, say, 50 to 100 million to maybe do some, what I would consider deferred maintenance or maintenance that needs to be done. And I've always questioned that on these type of assets that we have within the city, is that have the auditors or the accountants ever looked at, is there an advantage to take such projects like this and maybe do a sale leaseback to where we receive a tremendous amount of money up front from, say, large private investors, with also a buyback clause that we buy it back in, say, 20 years at say, fair market value. Is there any advantage on looking at that on a lot of the assets that we have within the city, where we have no debt, obviously, on a lot of the assets? And is there any advantage to do a sale leaseback to private investors? As we know, the real estate market right now is very good. There tends to be a lot of money out there looking for investments. So I do question that when we, and this is past administration, I want to make this very clear, is that when we run up deferred maintenance on a lot of these assets, is there a way that we can try to correct the problems that were created in the past through a sale leaseback on some of these properties and have the potential new private investors covering a lot of this deferred maintenance within the purchase or sale leaseback agreements? So I'd like to maybe have that looked at a little bit closer and have your opinions on that. And maybe that might be an opportunity. Again, my concern always is to cut the debt down. Do not give away things when you have a tremendous amount of debt in front of you, and let outside foundations pick up the slack with individuals that want to come back to the city and pay fair market value for these properties. The city has too much debt to give anything away. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else want to speak? And so we'll need a motion to accept the auditor's report.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Fritz?
Well, thank you. It's very nice to have both of these together, and appreciate the outside audit as well as our own city auditor's oversight of this whole process. Aye.
Saltzman?
Thank you very much. Aye.
Novick?
Thank you very much. Aye.
Hales?
Well, I want to appreciate the good work the auditor and her team and our outside reviewers have done. Again, for me, seeing 3 reports in a row, first the outside audit of our pension system, then the CAFR, Comprehensive Annual Financial Review, and now this audit by an independent firm hired by our independent auditor, all saying essentially the same thing, which is that the city of Portland is in a sound financial basis, and that without exception, our managers are managing and accounting for public funds correctly. There are not very many places in the United States of America where you can say all those things. So we should celebrate this good work. And in fact, I was thinking, as Jim was talking, that a lot of the credit for the fact that there were no over expenditures and that there were no compliance issues really does need to be, we need to note that as chief executives of our portfolios of bureaus, that our bureau managers and their staffs have been doing an excellent job of following complex procedures. I wish we could make state law and GASB simpler, but we can't. We have to follow these arcane requirements, but it proves that we're doing that. And then finally, I just want to appreciate especially that the letter from Moss Adams noted the change that you led, Commissioner Fritz, to dedicate a larger percentage of our one-time available ending fund balance revenues to capital expenditure, and that was called out as an improvement in our position from just last year to this. So some progress that I think we should celebrate as good council policy as well. So bravo all around. Thank you for great work, and we look forward to having 3 similarly tame reports in the future. Aye. Thank you all. Okay, let's move on to 296.
Approve innovation funding for 17 micro-grant proposals for fiscal year 2014-15.
So this is our innovation fund at work, trying to find new ways to do things, trying out experiments that might or might not work. Again, rubber sidewalks are not the normal way to deal with the provision of sidewalks, but we're going to try it, see if it works. Trying to make our summer free for all program more culturally responsive. We know we want to do it. We're not sure if the ways that we're selecting here will actually work, but the whole point of the Innovation Fund is for public managers to be able to try things and to prototype things and to understand that there's risk and to accept the probability that some of them will fail and that no one will be punished for innovating and failing. So we've sequestered a little bit of money in the city's budget to do just that, and our team is here to report on some of those projects that are now before us. Good morning.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. Jane Brayton, I manage the OMF Business Operations Division, and I'm here this morning on behalf of Fred Miller. We're here to ask you to approve this ordinance authorizing funding for 17 microgrants through the City Innovation Fund. I'm sorry that Fred is on a rare day off out of the office because I think that the microgrant process was actually one of his favorites, both because we heard when we met with small bureaus, please streamline processes to make them easier for us and more accessible, and because he really liked the idea of building a culture of innovation. He said often, we don't have to wait a year to come up with a good idea. Let's figure out a way we can have a rolling process. So I'm pleased to represent him today. We're now in the second year, and so the City Innovation Fund continues to support innovative ideas with an emphasis on equity, opportunity, and again, promoting that culture of innovation. So on behalf of our proposers and the review panel, we want to thank the mayor and the council for supporting this effort. Even in tough economic times and budget crunch, you supported this concept that people could make things better, and we could do this through small investments to make those improvements. And many of our proposers have commented that they could not have moved their project forward if it hadn't have been for this support. So please let us convey our thanks to you. We also want to thank our proposers and our review panel, and I'm just going to ask them to wave from the audience so that you know who they are. Our proposers are the people out in the bureaus who've worked with community members, other bureaus to make things happen. And our review panel, we had community members Warren Chan and Emily Rice and City Representative Sam Hutchinson, and I know he's here today as well, and Robert Walker. They volunteered their time to help make this process a good one and meaningful in providing feedback. I want to give a brief introduction and then really turn us over to the main focus, which is the people who brought these projects forward and are making things happen. And I'll come up at the end to answer any questions. So just to let you know a little background, the innovation micro grants, as we're calling them, are for those projects under $10,000 was the general guideline, although we said they could go up to $20,000 to be considered. We started in February with a call for ideas, and we got 46 proposals from 13 bureaus. You may recall when we were back here in January, when we did the big fall call for ideas for both large and micro grants, we got 45 proposals from 16 bureaus. So all in all, we've generated almost 100 interesting ideas on how to improve city services, make them work better, and we've received these ideas from almost every bureau. So that's part of our marketing and outreach challenge in the future. Our review panel had a tough job because they had to look at all of these good ideas and really look at those that promoted equity and opportunity, improved customer service, made our processes more efficient or more effective. So then we invited all of our proposers into a facilitated meeting with our review panel where they could answer questions and receive feedback firsthand. The review panel narrowed down that list to 17 microgrant proposals they're recommending to you today. I'd now like to introduce Janet Storm from OMF Business Operations. She has served as the primary contact for proposers and the review panel, and she'll be bringing up, we have a sampling of 5 of them to share with you today, and we're really pleased that this gives them an avenue to get recognized for taking that risk to bring forward a new idea and asking for your support. And then I'll be back around for any questions. So, Janet.
Good morning. My name is Janet Storm. I'm a management analyst with OMF Business Operations, and I coordinate the grant proposal process. We wanted to share a little bit with you about that process. On February 11th, OMF Business Operations put out a call for microgrant ideas citywide. All city employees were notified that the city was looking for creative microgrant proposals that accomplish one or more of the following: promote equity and opportunity in city government and our community, improve customer service to the community and/or city customers, create more effective and efficient city processes, and make things better in general. Interested employees submitted one-page microgrant proposals, and the one-page proposals were then sent to all bureau directors so that they could provide input on proposals from their own bureaus, as well as possibly identify cross-bureau partnership opportunities. We then forwarded 46 microgrant proposals submitted by 13 bureaus to the Innovation Review Panel. The panel was asked to evaluate the proposals based on their ability to pass the following 5 filters. Number 1, do you think that the proposal is innovative? Is it original, and does it show strategic creativity? Number 2, taking other funding sources into consideration, such as the sponsor bureau's operating budget, is the Innovation Fund the most logical funding source for this particular proposal? Number 3, can this project actually be carried out? Do you believe that the proposed project can be achieved within the estimated budget provided? 4, are all of the key partners confirmed to be on board with this effort? And 5, are there benefits to the proposed project? Does it advance equity? Does it provide opportunity? And is there a potential for greater benefits with broader applications? On March 9th, our panel met, and through an interactive, facilitative discussion with the project proposers, they agreed upon the funding recommendations for the 17 project proposals that you have before you. And now we've invited 6 proposers to share a minute or 2 with you today about 5 of the recommended proposals in a little bit more detail. First, I'd like to introduce Laura Nemi, who is from Portland Parks and Recreation. Laura?
Great. Come on up, Laura. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Laura Nemi. I am the program manager for Portland Parks and Recreation's Community Gardens program, and we operate 50 gardens covering 21 acres throughout the city, provide land to people who want to grow their own food. And over the past few years, we've seen an increased demand from people who are living in poverty and people who are from immigrant and refugee communities. We currently have 16 languages represented in our program. And we've discovered that some of our policies, unfortunately, inadvertently prohibit practices that are widely used by different cultures. We've also realized that there are certain policies that don't really take into account the resources available to people that are living with limited incomes. So with this micro grant, we propose to conduct a culturally inclusive policy review process. This will involve the Office of Equity and Human Rights Senior Policy Analyst and Parks' Equity and Inclusion Manager to assist me and community garden staff with designing an inclusive process. Then community garden and parks public involvement staff will implement this over a series of community meetings with representatives from our diverse gardeners. The grant we're seeking is $14,000, which will be used for interpretation and translation, childcare, and food for these community meetings. And we hope that the end result is that we'll have culturally inclusive policies and procedures, and that will reduce the barriers and increase participation to people that are historically underserved by our program. We're also hoping to, through this process, cultivate cultural leaders who can help be managers at their gardens and advocate for gardeners in their community and help us to further understand the needs of our community and be responsive to that. And lastly, further Parks' equity and inclusion goals. So thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Antoinette Pietka and Uma Krishnan from the Portland Housing Bureau.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's a tag team today. Honorable Commissioners, Mayor Hales, good morning. I'm Uma Krishnan, analyst and demographer with the city's Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. And in this valuable minute that I have, I just want to provide the context for the web scraper project that was funded, $5,000, our gratitude for the same. As you may know, we, as in the Planning Bureau and the Bureau of, and the Housing Bureau, we are constantly looking at public real estate websites like the Zillow or the Redfin or Trulia, just to understand what's going on currently in the market. And this is partly to understand what's going on in the market and also to be able to evaluate, our planning programs, our housing programs, how well are they working? Do we need to do anything more? Can we see an impact? This is a really time-intensive process, and during one of our meetings with my colleagues at the Housing Bureau, I was simply lamenting. I said, I'm constantly looking at these free websites to be able to understand what's going on in the market. And Antoinette picks up the story from there.
Good morning. I'm Antoinette Pietka from the Portland Housing Bureau. And our Innovation Fund proposal would fund the development of a housing data web scraper, or basically a software robot that would be used by both bureaus to collect information from the web, to download it and transform it into structured data that we could then analyze over time. The scraper would be automated to visit sites and collect information such as real estate listings, vacancies, unit types, just a whole, all of the data that's out there right now. And it would save staff in both bureaus a considerable amount of time.
Question about that. Would it ultimately, like Portland Maps, be able to be turned around and revealed to the public, folks that wanted to see that collected data?
We could. That's one of the intent.
Yeah, good. Next year's proposal.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have John Holtrop from the Bureau of Environmental Services.
Hello. I'm John Holtrop. I'm with this BES. I'm the manager of the Extra Strength Sewer Charge Program. And my proposal is, or our proposal, I should say, is essentially to do multilingual video, educational videos for food service facilities. Our Cut Through the Fog program impacts about 3,000 or more food service facilities, restaurants. And there's a financial impact to those businesses, both through potential compliance issues and for the sewer rates. And we want to make sure that they're cleaning their grease traps, maintaining grease traps in the adequate fashion. And the rates themselves also have best management components to them, so there are rate discounts depending on what things they do. So we want to get that information out to those customers. A pretty big percentage of the food service facilities have English as a second language. And so we want to make sure that they are getting all that information so that they can get the full rate discounts that they are entitled to and that they are in compliance at all times.
So if this works, then the customers will avoid extra charges, right?
It potentially could lower their sewer charges.
Yeah.
And hopefully avoid compliance issues. And we have clusters, of restaurants, and some of them are demographically related. So we want to make sure that we're not getting grease blockages in those areas. And if we're not getting information out to people about what's desired, required, and beneficial, then that could be a negative effect to the sewer system.
Great. Thank you.
Next, we have Julia Thompson from the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Julia Thompson, and I'm from the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, and I want to tell you about the Neighborhood Anti-Litter Campaign Toolkit that we've applied for a micro grant for. So as we've all experienced, Portland is experiencing a growth spurt with thousands of new residents moving here every month. Lots of new construction is filling in our neighborhoods and business districts and making them even more walkable and vibrant. And this pace of change and growth is exciting, but it also adds wear and tear in our neighborhoods and business districts. Increased litter like cigarette butts and fast food containers pollute the urban environment and affect livability. BPS is looking at ways to improve access to garbage and recycling containers in our business districts. However, we believe that garbage cans alone are not enough to create the behavior change to keep our districts clean. The Neighborhood Pride Anti-Litter Campaign Toolkit will provide a practical and efficient way to reduce litter throughout the city. Through a collaboration with Venture Portland, we aim to make the Anti-Litter Campaign Toolkit available to the approximate 50 business districts. And this low-cost, customizable resource for them will be developed with input from business district and neighborhood association leaders and participants, and will include templates for outdoor ads and storefront signage, as well as a social media component that district participants could promote. And we believe this free, customizable resource will empower neighborhood businesses and leaders to do something about the litter in front of their businesses and their neighborhoods. It will benefit longtime residents and newcomers, shoppers and diners and districts throughout the city by building neighborhood pride and drawing attention to garbage cans that make it easier to keep walkable districts litter-free. And it will provide an equitable resource, allowing all business districts to implement the campaign toolkit easily with minimal costs. So thank you for considering this innovation microgrant.
Thank you.
And our final presenter today is Jody Yates from the Portland Bureau of Transportation.
Speaking of rubber sidewalks.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners and Mayor. My name is Jody Yates. I'm here representing the Bureau of Transportation. I work in the Maintenance Operations group. One of my programs administers the Sidewalk Repair Program. As a reminder, city charter requires that property owners maintain their sidewalks in the city, and my program is the one that tells them when their sidewalk needs repair. To put it in context, in 2014, the program required 1,900 property repairs, and the average cost per repair is about $1,200, so that equates to $2 million annually. We estimate that 90% of those repairs are a result of mature tree roots pushing on the sidewalk, creating a tripping hazard. PBOT engineers have researched materials for several years and are recommending a product for testing. The product is called Rubberway. It is a pervious, flexible surface system made from recycled tire rubber. The literature is suggesting that this will allow tree roots to expand into the sidewalk without creating a tripping hazard. The microgrant request is to install a pilot project and to monitor it for several years. The pilot project is a property or a sidewalk that is currently maintained by PBOT, and it has mature tree roots requiring the sidewalk repair. This sidewalk was last repaired 7 years ago for the same reason. If the product is successful, PBOT will either install other test sites and/or write specifications allowing the product to be used throughout the city. This could result in a savings to citizens of the city of Portland of $2 million annually. And thank you for considering the project.
Jody, I have to say, this is a very exciting project. The idea that we could use a new product and an innovation to save people money, many people each year would just be terrific.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Many thanks to all of our presenters today, and I'd like to invite Jane Brayton back up for questions.
Okay, questions for Jane or Janet?
I have a couple of questions. You read the criteria that they were evaluated for, and by the way, thank you to all the committee members, and thanks to all the staff who've proposed great projects. It's good to be able to encourage innovation amongst our staff, but the criteria for evaluation didn't include saving money, and I'm wondering about that because initially it was set up with the view of investing now to make savings later.
Our criteria, I believe from the 13-14 ordinance, had a series of criteria that they wanted them all met. This time around, after some discussions, we sort of broadened that to include efficiencies because when the Bureau customers heard saving money, I think they were equating that with potentially a budget cut that would come later, and it was a little bit harder to assess where those savings might occur. So last time around in January, you heard from Leslie Goodlow about sharing information with the faith-based community and the Housing Bureau. And the tool that they wanted to implement would save a lot of time in data entry, but it would save it some on the city side and also some on the nonprofit side. So the city is getting a better investment in helping their housing programs meet the homeless community needs, but there isn't necessarily, we could do an estimate of that efficiency, but it wouldn't necessarily relate to a cost savings that would be as great just within the Housing Bureau, just to the city. But happy to explore that with you further so that we can make sure that that meets your needs about how do we best express that overall. We think this idea from the Housing Bureau would make a really good investment, saves a lot of time in working on the problem, and maybe broaden that to say it could reflect something that's not just city savings.
Well, that, I agree. I mean, the rubber sidewalk is a great example of that. That could save property owners a lot of money too, as well as that there's not all that much sidewalk that we maintain, but some. So I'd like to see a return to that in future iterations. The way many of these projects are now, I appreciate seeing the emphasis on equity, and it's fitting that the mayor is leading the Office of Equity and Human Rights and that they've been involved in many of these grants and as partners and such. I understand there's going to be another funding round in May, is that correct?
We will be asking to take some of the funds that were not spent this year. So you will see a spring bump request to move funds into the Innovation Fund for next year, and that would help fund a May call for ideas in terms of our small grants.
And that would come with the spring bump? Because there is still money left from this year, right?
There is about $10,000 that's left from this year's allocation. In addition, OMF is asking to return some funds that we did not use for program management and ask the council, we just briefed the mayor's office on this week, and so we're asking if that could be applied towards the Innovation Fund that would help do a May call for ideas.
Okay, so there's an issue, Mayor, that I just want to flag for you, that I think the top-rated suggestion is not part of this package, and it was partly because of a glitch in email communication with Parks. It's a great project, it's just that, so I have a suggestion that in the future you ask for an affirmative response from bureaus to, is this project fine with you? Because we all get so many hundreds of emails a week that even the most diligent director, who I would say that Mike Abate is one of the most diligent directors, sometimes things just get missed. So that, I think, would be a process improvement. But I would hate for the project that didn't get funded, which is the kiosks in community centers to help people apply for employment. There's some issues that we need to work out between Parks and HR, Human Resources, that I know Mike Abate and Anna Camwood are working on. Just want to make sure that we don't miss out on the opportunity of funding that project in this fiscal year.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Other questions for our team? Thank you both. Thanks very much. And to all the presenters, thank you. Does anyone want to speak on this item?
We have Joe Walsh and Lightning.
Okay, come on up.
For the record, my name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice. We love this. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Watchdog X. Of a lot of things that I've seen in the council chambers on different ordinances, this is, to me, the most impressive, in my opinion. And I highly recommend and applaud the bureaus for coming up with these great innovative ideas. One of the things I like about this is that a lot of these ideas will be built upon and used in other areas and even other states possibly. So this is kind of being at the forefront of some really great things to happen. And that's what I look at this as, is that you cannot teach or be taught what is yet to be created. And that's what I like about this whole micro grant proposal. And we're seeing a lot of this innovation coming in from, say, Silicon Valley at a much higher level on some of the thinking. But what's interesting is a lot of these things can grow into some great areas, and other people are going to notice this, and this is really positive because to show this type of creativity and come forward with these ideas and be presented these grants, I think is really, really a great thing and to build upon. Now, getting back to my watchdog issue on having a few concerns, and it's nothing against Commissioner Fritz, but when you look at this, on the grants that have been received, 9 grants went to Parks and Recreation. And then a few of these other ones got either 2 or 1. So out of the total grants received, you received 59.27%. Now, that's a concern to me, is that I'd almost like to have maybe a cap put on the different bureaus, like maybe 2 grants to each bureau, and make sure that we don't have one bureau receiving a tremendous amount of grants. And if we're going to talk equity and being equitable, we have to also look at that too on this type of grant funding process, that there's a lot of other bureaus that need to have these type of grants, such as transportation, and to have that innovation and the opportunity to step forward with these ideas and present that to the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, come on up, please.
Hello, this is Benjamin Barber, and I think that a small grant to build these smart bike locks from the Open Bike Initiative would do a lot to kind of bring Uber-like services to bicycles, and could be done with the remaining amount of budget that's left over.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, anyone else want to speak on this item? We'll have to wait for a moment for Commissioner Salzman to come back because it's an emergency ordinance. So we might need to set this over for a little while.
I could talk for a while.
or one of us could make a speech, or Rachel could see if he's available. So give us a moment. And then we'll decide whether we need to move on and come back to this and act. Well, we can certainly make some comments, and I want to make some. And we don't have to wait till we vote. First of all, I just think the work that's being done, Fred, Jane, Janet, those that are leading this effort is right on track with encouraging a pretty broad variety. Granted, maybe a bunch of them came from one bureau, but the variety of these projects is even more impressive than I expected, frankly. The creativity seems to me to be bubbling up in the way that one would hope would happen. In my private sector career, very early in that chapter of my life, I went to my boss and I had an idea and I said, we should try this. And he said, okay, Charlie's got a good idea, let's go for it. And I'll tell you, that was so empowering. And I hope that it seems to me that's what's happening in our bureaus, that people are coming up with good ideas. The leadership in the bureaus is encouraging that. OMF managing this fund is supplying the resources to make it happen. And we're getting exactly what I think all of us had hoped for in terms of not just creativity and not just the opportunity to save money or be more effective as an organization, but to empower people in the bureaus that know what they're doing to come forward with things that will work or not, and that we all understand that some of them will not work and we'll try something else. So again, I want to keep repeating that failure is an option in this case, and it's not the one that anyone seeks, but it's okay for some of these experiments not to work. That's why we've measured the amount of funds that we're setting aside for this and keep reiterating the expectation that people should be creative and that that creativity is going to be supported by us as a council and by the bureau managers and by our finance and administration team that oversee this effort. So I'm really happy with the way this is going and appreciate particularly hearing some of the project leadership come forward today with both the ideas and the enthusiasm. So with that, maybe I'll move to a roll call vote and allow my colleagues to comment as well.
Fritz?
Well, I was going to celebrate the fact that 9 of the 17 are from Parks, and I don't apologize for having the most innovative staff in the city. For a small fee, I will allow them to come and teach your staff. Really, there's such a broad range of services that Portland Parks and Recreation provides, and as such, dismal funding for a lot of them, that it's not surprising that many of these from parks, and as I said, there's one more coming forward, hopefully in May. So thank you for all of the staff and all the citizen volunteers who evaluated these grants and who are going to be working diligently on them. I know from my own first start was getting a $3,500 Bureau of Environmental Services education grant as a mom at Markham Elementary School. And I thought it was so cool that the city of Portland was investing in my concepts, and it ended up being a boatload of work. So I would caution all of the staff to make sure that things are vetted thoroughly through the system before, as you're developing the concepts, because we want to make sure that as many projects as possible are successful, because then that does empower and you keep going. So thank you all for doing all this great work. Aye.
Saltzman?
Well, I appreciate the mayor creating this innovation fund a couple of years ago, and it looks like there's been a lot of good creative thinking going on here, and hopefully a lot of these projects will prove to be successful. Although, as the mayor said, failure is an option too, but that's what innovation is all about. Aye.
Novick?
I think Commissioner Fritz has an unfair advantage because there are folks who are out there communing with nature. We all know that's conducive to creativity, so I think they should have a handicap. I think this is a tremendous initiative. I really appreciate Fred and Jane and Janet's work and all of the Bureau's work. And one thing I think people should be aware of is that, I mean, people might be asking, why do we need to set aside specific pots of money for this stuff? Why can't bureaus just do innovative things whenever they see an innovative thing to do? And the truth is the government budgets tend to be pretty prescriptive, and the bureaus don't generally have big pots of money set aside for just doing cool stuff. So that's one of the reasons that it was important to create a pot of money that's specifically designated for cool stuff. And gosh darn it, we're seeing some cool stuff. Thank you all so much. Aye.
Hales?
One more anecdote. Early in my term as mayor, I went to my first U.S. Conference of Mayors meeting, and one of the people that I met who I value as a mentor is Greg Fisher, who's the mayor of Louisville. And he had a very successful private sector career and then came back into government. And I was sort of agonizing out loud. I'm not sure how much time to spend in extracurricular activities as a mayor. You know, I have to be in council and present and helping to lead the city, but I also value this kind of learning, and I'm just trying to strike that balance for how much time. Do I get involved in the C40 organization? Do I get involved in U.S. Conference of Mayors or National League of Cities? And each of us that do some of that kind of work outside of the formal boundaries of our responsibilities here have to kind of weigh that allocation of our time. And again, remember, this is a private sector person, and he looked at me and said, well, how many people are working for the city of Portland? Well, about 5,600. He said, well, how many of them are charged with cross-pollinating ideas and research and development? I said, oh, I guess not that many of us. Thank you. I understand that I should be here now. But actually, I would be happy to report back to Greg or any other mayor that now there are a lot of people involved in research and development and cross-pollinating ideas, and that was the hope of this program, and I'm very happy to see that hope being realized. Keep up the good work, keep producing wild new ideas, some of which will work, and keep competing against each other for creativity. Very well done. Thank you. Aye. Okay. Good work. Let's hear it for our bureau. Good job. All right. Item 297 is the adoption of findings.
Appeal of Northwest District Association against Design Commission's decision to approve with conditions the Tess O'Brien Apartments at 1953 Northwest Overton and 1950 Northwest Petty Grove Streets, LU 14-220722DZ-AD.
Okay, the findings are before us. Any reason to have any concerns about adopting them today? And if not, I'd like to hear a motion for the adoption of findings.
Move to adopt the findings.
Second.
Further discussion? Anyone want to speak on? We don't take testimony on the adoption of findings, right? Never mind. I'll blame the cold for that. Roll call, please.
Fritz.
Well, thanks very much to BDS staff and to the citizens and the developers on this project. Once again, it was a very constructive and illuminating hearing. Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Novick.
Aye.
Hales.
All right. Okay. Time certain items 298 through 303.
298, approve the 11th Amendment to the Central East Side Urban Renewal Plan to add plan area and projects, extend the duration of the plan, and increase the maximum indebtedness. 299, approve the termination of the Education Urban Renewal Area Plan. 300, adopt the 4th Amendment to the North Macadam Urban Renewal Plan to add to the plan area, add projects, and extend the time frame of the plan. 301, approve the 11th Amendment to the Airport Way Urban Renewal Plan to reduce plan area by approximately 970.5 acres. 302, approve the 2nd Amendment to the Willamette Industrial Urban Renewal Plan to cease collections of tax increment. And 303, approve the 4th Amendment to the amended and restated River District Urban Renewal Plan to reduce plan area by approximately 36.4 acres.
Okay, let me make some opening comments in terms of how we're going to proceed, and then I'll turn it over to Patrick. So 2 weeks ago, we had 2 proposed amendments. Commissioner Novick requested that we collapse the infrastructure, open space, and targeted industry line items in the estimated expenditure for the North Macadam urban renewal area. Commissioner Fritz's suggestion to Commissioner Saltzman that he memorialize his intent requiring housing on the property owned by the Fire Bureau through an amendment should it be offered for redevelopment. So now, today, PDC will present how they've incorporated those amendments into the respective URA reports that are in front of us, and we will take testimony, because we're required to do so, on the amendments, only on the amendments, because we closed the hearing on the remainder of these reports. In the last 2 weeks, PDC, Housing Bureau, Commissioner Saltzman's office, Commissioner Frist's office, and my office have continued to develop prepare a development solicitation for Parcel 3. PDC is preparing a resolution that reflects that work, and I think Commissioner Fitch would like to be here and has filed that resolution for consideration next week. So for all those reasons, because we're going to take testimony on the amendments today, because Commissioner Fish wants to be here and he has a resolution to back up the council's discussion and intent on affordable housing in that district, I want to continue all these items for final adoption, second reading, and roll call next week. But again, we'll hear from Patrick and we'll take testimony on the amendments today. Patrick.
Thank you, Mayor Hales. Good morning, Commissioners. As Mayor Hales mentioned, I just wanted to quickly do an overview of the 2 amendments, and then I can move on, and then you can take testimony on those amendments, but just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Those 2 amendments, one was, as the mayor mentioned, was to update the table that appears. There's 2 tables, actually, tables 10 and 10B in the report to the North Macadam URA plan, and then the second update is actually, once again, a change to language in the report to the Central East Side Urban Renewal Area Plan that refers to the desire for affordable housing in the Clinton Triangle. So I'll just quickly run through those, and so everybody has the same information, and then we can take testimony. So the first one, as we talked about last week, we wanted to update this table. Table 10A is the summary table, 10B has the detail behind it, and basically this was collapsing 3 different categories of expenditures into one line. So it adds the commercial redevelopment loans and grants and target industry work and moves that into one kind of super category of infrastructure, open space, and redevelopment. The number ends up being about $13.5 million, ends up in that line, and you can see on the slide the lines that have been impacted by that. So we've eliminated the commercial redevelopment loans and grants line that was up in the top section that was $4.5 million. We've removed the target industry line that was $2 million and added those sums to what used to be just the infrastructure and open space line, and that's now infrastructure, open space, and redevelopment. This just, once again, this table refers to the current resource projections for the expansion of the urban renewal area. It does not assume any development agreements or whatnot. It's simply the current projections as we have them. You know, with a ZRZ development agreement, we could revisit the projections at a later date, but these are the projections that we are using for the purpose of the URA amendments. Commissioner Fritz, as studying it, just want to make sure we're.
Yeah, I don't know that I have paper copies of this, so if I could.
Of the updated report?
Right, of the new table.
I think it's.
Have we handed, did we?
Packet.
here.
It's in the, and these are pages 32 and 33?
Okay. Yeah, I've got, okay, 10A, yes, thank you.
And then the next one, this is the paragraph that appears in the page 26 of the report that relates to the update to the Central East Side urban renewal plan, and it relates specifically to bringing affordable housing to the Clinton Triangle. And so the language in red is the language that we are that we've added. And I mean, I can read it out loud, and then I'll just give a little context. Should the Fire Bureau dispose of its property in the area, it shall include a requirement for affordable housing, or shall be included in a larger development site that will be developed as affordable housing. This requirement may be implemented through a covenant to the deed requiring affordable housing upon the sale or transfer of the city property. And this simply just allows for two different scenarios. One is that the development will occur on the Fire Bureau site, and therefore we meet the requirement there. But it also accounts for what I think is a more likely scenario, which is that when the parcels, because it's not just the Fire Bureau parcel, there's a Water Bureau parcel, there's other parcels, when they are sold to private or other maybe not-for-profit development interests, depending on the scenario, it may be that projects cut across the existing property lines, and we want to account for affordable housing being built in that triangle, as opposed to making it required just within a kind of somewhat arbitrary boundary of the Fire Bureau property. And we shared this with the commissioner in advance, and he was fine with that. So that's what I have. If you have questions, I can take them now, or I'll step away and we can allow for testimony.
Okay. Questions at the moment? Okay, stand by for more, and we'll see who wants to speak on the amendments.
I have 5 people signed up.
Okay.
The first 3, please, coming up are Neil Walker, Joe Walsh, and Kathy Orton.
Okay. Come on up. Good morning.
Good morning.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, so we'll go reverse order.
That's fine.
I'm Kathy Orton of Brooklyn Neighborhood, thanking you for allowing some additional testimony today on the amendments. Brooklyn obviously has a range of affordable housing currently and encourages that concept. But Clinton Triangle should not be the only place affordable housing is specified. Council should be enforcing its affordable housing quotas in the Pearl District and in all the URAs. I'm also asking the council consider additional amendment, which would be adding portions to Central East Side, Brooklyn portions southeast 17th to McLaughlin. If you're serious about development against the PMLR line, because there's many vacant lots there already, or adding south of Powell if you desire continuity of and development on both sides of Powell. And if you look at some of the acreages in question, southeast 17th is roughly 36 acres, public and private, and has 2 of the light rail stations. And south of Powell is a very small area with some private industry and would allow a continuity in planned development and the light rail line. We still have a problem in Brooklyn with the Clinton Triangle, feeling that there is some sort of, quote, insider trading in knowledge and ownership of that lot beyond the Fire Bureau. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Walsh?
My name is Joe Walsh. I represent individual for Justice, we would request that we would send in written submissions to you on this. We would like to study the amendment a little bit longer on this. And are you going to vote on this today?
No.
I didn't think so. So it's an unusual request. Usually we run our mouths and tell you what our opinions are. But we would like some more time to look at this amendment. We're a little confused on this, and we would just request that. And I'll send you something in writing within 2 or 3 days.
Okay, great.
Is that reasonable?
You bet. Thank you. Okay, anyone else? You had some others signed up?
Debbie
Yeah.
Iona, Marianne Schwab, and Susan Pierce.
Good morning. You want to go first? You want to let Debbie go first? Okay, go ahead, Debbie. Good morning.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I'm Debbie Iona, representing the League of Women Voters of Portland. The League supports the amendment that relates to South Waterfront open space. Parks are critical to the district's livability. The West Quadrant Plan anticipates close to 6,000 residential units in South Waterfront. Families living in those homes will not have backyards where they can recreate. OHSU students will want someplace to shoot baskets or kick around a soccer ball. Children living there will need playgrounds. They should not have to leave the neighborhood to find these facilities. Recreation standards for a community of this size recommend facilities such as tennis and basketball courts, playgrounds, and picnic areas. In addition to the existing Carruthers Park, which does not accommodate these types of activities, the council adopted South Waterfront Plan calls for a 4.5-acre Ross Island Bridge Park. This park is planned as the district's largest, with space for active recreational facilities. The city should stay firm on its requirements that Zidell must commit to making land available for the bridge park and to greenway improvements in exchange for urban renewal dollars. Recently, a more complete summary of the Block 33 transactions between PDC and OHSU became available. The $6 million committed to the now abandoned Block 33 affordable housing development came from city housing resources. OHSU still owes the city $2 million. It appears that if they do not sell the land by 2017, the housing funds will never be paid back. This simply is not acceptable. Should a sale not take place, OHSU should transfer ownership of at least half of the site to the city in lieu of the $2 million repayment. This would provide OHSU the opportunity to contribute to the vision of the district by making land available for housing affordable to OHSU nurses, aides, and janitors, not to mention returning the $2 million of city housing money that OHSU owes. The River District has been held up as a textbook example of urban renewal done right. In that case, the development agreement and urban renewal plan were approved simultaneously. All of the planned parks and most of the affordable housing have been successfully developed. This council should take a page from that experience and make adoption of the North Macadam Amendment contingent upon agreements with Zidell and OHSU for parks and affordable housing sites. Short of that, will you commit to the public that, as the city negotiates development agreements, these items will be required in exchange for the millions of dollars that will be invested in the district to the benefit of these property owners? Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have a question for you, Debbie.
Yeah.
I know, and it's evident that this process has been a little iterative.
Yeah.
So the amendment that's on the table from Commissioner Novick actually could reduce the amount of money for parks. There was previously that money in the line item, and it was specified for parks, and now it's specified for parks and other, generally for infrastructure, including transportation. So does that alter your
Well, then it
comment?
does alter, I'll change my first sentence, and we do not support, but you understand all the reasons are still the same about the parks being important to this district, and we need the money. And I guess I took away from when this discussion came up I guess it was the last one, that this would sort of allow parks and infrastructure to tap into some of the resources that were in the the commercial redevelopment line.
That's part of it too.
Okay, so I sort of
But
thought
it's
it might,
transportation of parks.
yeah, I thought it might open up more resources possibly for parks, but it's a gamble, I also realize, yeah. We wanted to make sure there's parks, how about that?
My turn. I'm Susan Pierce. I'm Chair of Hosford Abernathy Neighborhood Association, which houses the Clinton Triangle. We haven't really discussed this amendment among the board members. I can't speak for the board as a whole, but I can say that I've had multiple conversations recently with board members and with other residents within the neighborhood who express concern about the loss of affordable housing in our neighborhood. It seems to be really popular, and we're seeing $700,000 homes. So we would very much support an opportunity to regain some of that affordable housing. Obviously, there are many advantages to affordable housing at a place that is at the nexus of multiple modes of transit and transportation. One of the often stated at one time disadvantages is the presence of heavy rail right along the district, but some of the noise has been recently resolved for the quiet zone. Our neighbors are happy about that. There is a concern about, I've heard recently about, what does affordable housing mean? Does it really mean those people with 0 to 60% of MFI, as opposed to young people needing to find housing on their way up within their careers? And I would hope that this is intended for the latter. From my experience on the Urban Renewal Area Advisory Committees, that's my understanding. We actually have the option for a park or an open space in that area that I mentioned during my last meeting with you, from the money that came to PDC from the sale of property back to OMSI. I would say that we, many of us within hand, we want to see something that is mixed income housing, not just affordable or low income housing, because we think it's better for everybody concerned. And I think that's everything I wanted to say.
So could I just clarify from Commissioner Saltzman? I know that Commissioner Fisher has also been working on this, but the intent is affordable housing at 60% and less. Is that correct?
Yes.
But that wouldn't
preclude-
prescribe having a mixed income
Right.
project.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't preclude by any means mixed income.
But it doesn't mean that we're providing affordable housing necessarily for someone who's a recent college graduate and then going to be moving up through the.
They might very well be 60%.
Yeah,
They may at
we
that
can't,
time.
we can't, select
Can't
certain
preclude
types of
them.
people that otherwise meet income guidelines and say they can't be eligible.
And is the intent of the amendment to say that it will just be affordable housing on that site? And if not, how much of any potential housing on that site would have to be affordable in order to comply with the proposed amendment?
I mean, that's a very good question. I don't think we have fully assessed what the opportunities are with this site, but we do think that there is a substantial opportunity with the property itself. We also think with the pending height bonuses for affordable housing, that will further incent development of affordable housing, but we don't have a specific project in front of us that we're scoping out at this point.
Well, I appreciate Ms. Pierce bringing this issue up, and perhaps between now and next week, there could be a little more specificity added to the amendment, because the way it reads now is just affordable housing, and it doesn't specify, is that all of it, half of it, a mixed, does that mean there's 2 units that are affordable and the rest of it's market rate?
Well,
I don't think we're gonna know.
Patrick may want to
Next.
comment on that too. This, again, remember, this is an urban renewal plan and a projected revenues and expenditures, not a budget, not a project plan. And we have so many milestones to pass. I mean, right now, this is a fire bureau maintenance facility.
Right.
That's what it is. If you go, you can go there today. That's what it is. We have a long way to go from that being a fire bureau maintenance facility to having it be a housing project of any character. And what has happened here is the commissioner in charge of the Housing Bureau has laid down a marker and said, there's going to be affordable housing there. And we cannot, we can guess at a number, but that's all we can do today.
So could we amend it's a policy statement, so we're not going to say there's going to be 200 units of 0 to 60 or whatever, but could we amend it to say there'd be a substantial component of affordable housing?
Well, let's let Patrick come back up and comment on that in a bit. He looks like he has a thought or two on that
Okay,
question.
great, thank you.
Ms. Schwab, good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Mary Ann Schwab, a community advocate. I've come to bury the number 298 11th Amendment to the Central East Side Urban Renewal Plan to add a plan area and projects and extend the duration of the plan, increase the maximum indebtedness. I'm not here to honor the proposed extension. Granted, urban renewal under the leadership of the Portland Development Commission has been Portland's principal redevelopment and revitalization tool since 1958. There rests the controversy today with the continued use of tax increment financing as basic funding mechanism for urban renewal. For this property owner, TIF has come to mean an open ATM for turnkey developers who are here today and gone tomorrow. I believe the time has come to pull the ATM plug financing on the proposed Clinton Triangle. I believe the broadest range of government activities must first contribute to the stability of 6 Portland school districts, Portland Parks and Recreation Programs and Maintenance, Police, Fire, Multnomah County Human Services within the city's 95 neighborhoods. I trust you are all aware of the pending Multnomah County Home for Everyone's initiative. For us to sit here and plan to put housing that close to an interstate railroad with toxic coal, crude oil, the Amtrak is not a safe environment for kids. Need I remind you that roughly 6-7 years ago, a little 9-year-old with Parker Rose School got too close to a railroad and lost 4 toes. That's 4 toes too many. It's not a safe environment. We talk about CO2s, we talk about the clean environment, clean water, and therefore I'm asking each of you to vote no to the PDC Clinton Triangle 16-acre expansion, thereby increasing long-term indebtedness payable by the next generations until 2052. Where are we going to be in 2052? We can't keep putting these debts on the next kids. And with tax compression, we've learned a lot about what happens to our dollars. Yours is not an easy job. You win a few, you lose a few, and I don't know where we stand on this, but kids come first, parks come first, and safe living for them. That's my feeling on this, and I thank you and appreciate for listening. We are all in tatters. We don't need any more oops from poor planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else that we have signed up? Carla?
That's all who signed
Okay.
up. Oh.
Come on up, please.
Hi there. So I was at the Zedell Urban Hackathon, and I actually got an award from them for having an innovative concept of just reducing the cost by having integrated living, schooling, and startup space. But I digress. I really would like to see some affordable housing, and right now in Salem today they're having a work session on the inclusionary zoning bill, so it's great that you guys aren't going to vote on that today. And I also noticed that PSU wants the University Place Hotel renovated, but I feel like the market could probably solve that a lot better, and have seen PSU just not really handle their finances very well. They've recently just fired a bunch of their bookkeepers and gone through a bunch of financial auditing. And in the past with the University Place, there's kind of some eminent domain taking stuff that's happened. And at this point in time, much of that burden is actually going to fall on the students to pay for that debt service over time. And they're spending more money in real estate than instructional hours. And ultimately, I do agree that we kind of have to pull the plug on the urban renewal. When it makes sense, by all means, use it, you know, and I would love to even have it be used for inclusionary housing or low-income housing, or for making community maker spaces, hacker spaces, training facilities, that sort of things. But anyways, thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thanks very much. All right, Patrick, could we get you to come back up and address a couple of questions? So one just came up in testimony. Could you perhaps reiterate why there's not a recommendation to increase the area of the Central East Side District to encompass more of Brooklyn?
So the issue comes down to really the pool of resources. So we could, you can draw the lines any way you want. The dollar is the dollar amount is the same, and so it's a matter of where the priorities for the district are, and what this council believes should be the priorities for the remaining life of the Central East Side, and so I think we've kind of clearly laid out what we've heard in terms of those priorities. So you can pull in other blocks, but then you're simply drawing on resources that that I think have, we have other priorities identified. So that's why we kept the boundaries as as kind of tightly drawn as they are, just to not create expectations. And you could pull in those additional blocks and say maybe 5 years from now we'll have a better understanding of priorities and we might make investments. But then those are blocks that are actually taken off the tax rolls as well. So you're expanding the scope of urban renewal without a specific promise of resources and creating additional competition for resources. And that was the view of the Urban Renewal Area Amendment Advisory Committee when they came back as well.
So is it also possible that, or permissible, that the council and the PDC board could choose to amend that district later? I mean, after we get done with the comp plan and.
No, I think this is the one shot we have to amend the district.
If we're going to add area in Brooklyn, this would be that one time?
No? So I guess we can come back, but we're out of acreage. Should we use all the maximum expansion of acreage, or when Kimberly wants to come up?
Yeah, that was the
Ask
question.
Kimberly Brandon to come up.
Is there any more wiggle room ever if we wanted to use it? I guess that's the question.
Good morning. So the cap is both 20% on acreage and maximum indebtedness. So with this amendment, we are increasing it up to the maximum indebtedness cap. So we cannot add any additional maximum indebtedness. But if we wanted to add any additional acreage up to that 20% cap, we still have a few acres. So we do have a little flexibility with that.
Not necessarily the whole area that we saw on the map from the Brooklyn Action.
No,
Plan.
that would exceed the 20% cap.
Okay. So we could at some future point say, oh yeah, this is a station area, it's going to change, and we ought to include this too?
Yes.
Okay.
But it's contiguous, so
right.
You only get to move a little bit around existing, but you can't leapfrog down to the next station area.
Right.
We don't have the acreage to do that.
Okay, so it would be this station area only, just a question of what other parcels? Yeah.
Yeah, just drawing from the boundary we have now.
Right, okay.
Are you talking about the citywide acreage cap or the Central East Side?
District.
Central East Side has a 20% cap.
Now with
in
these
terms of-
changes, we're well under the citywide cap.
Yes.
So we're
Each
taking-
specific urban renewal area, you have a limited amount of expansion you can do.
Okay.
Through the life of the district.
We're taking, 1,800 acres, I think if I remember the number right, we're taking 1,800 acres out of the cap with this package. So we've created some headroom overall, but not in this district. The other question I had before I let others chime in, and that is the Block 33 OHSU chronology. Can you walk us through that again, please?
Yeah, we won't go through the details again, but there were $6 million was paid. It was actually $3 million was a down payment on paying for parking, and we got that money back. $3 million was we paid OHSU for the air rights to develop on the site. We got $1 million back in transportation SDC credits, which we're in the process of selling and realizing 100% of the value of that. And then there is $2 million that remains in the property that we would get back from OHSU if they were to sell the property. There's a 2017 date on it. We're actually in conversation with OHSU right now about extending that. It wasn't the idea to create a narrow window for us to get our money back. At the time, it seemed like the right window. But the bigger point I want to make is that that is completely out of the set aside calculation as we speak. So the $6 million is not counted against the set aside. So if the $2 million comes back to to us, then that's 2 million that can be used for another purpose. But the number that we're using to calculate the set aside and to get to 42% of the overall resources does not include that $6 million. So.
Thank you. Other questions?
So the other thing I want to just, I guess Ben was explaining this to me, if there's a desire to amend the language that we propose on this for the Centrally Side report, and in order to avoid reopening it next week and delaying the vote, we would need to amend it right now.
Okay.
So if there's more specificity we want in the language, then I think that that should happen today. And we did, I do think these are legitimate questions, and it's just, as Commissioner Saltzman said, we don't really know. It's actually less predictable than what we know in South Waterfront. South Waterfront, we know we're talking about new projects, and so there's a lot of experience around doing new construction, affordable housing projects, what you could get for your dollars. In the Clinton Triangle, I think it's more likely that it'll be a customized mixed-use development, and so how affordable housing appears in the Triangle, I think, will be different than what we're talking about in North Macadam. That being said, there's probably ways we could craft some minimum. We have to keep in mind the dollars are a lot smaller in Centrally Side, so the simple math on that would suggest that under the city's current formula of subsidizing units, we could do the math quickly, but you're talking about something on the order of, 25, 30, 35 units. We've talked about, as Commissioner Saltzman highlighted, that this is a place where we might be able to get more affordable housing based on different, bonuses, and that might be the most, that might be the formula that gets us to a bigger number, but we don't know any of that right now. And affordable housing alone is not going to maximize the development potential of the Clinton Triangle. So I do think we should anticipate that we're going to want to attract other forms of development in the Triangle in addition to affordable housing. If there just isn't enough, I think, money to make affordable housing happen there without some corresponding market development of whether it's commercial or residential or some other institutional use.
Could you point me to where I have the language written down as to what the amendment is?
So that's page 26 of the report.
Well, Commissioner Saltzman, let us
You had
know.
it back on the screen.
I put it back up on the screen.
Yeah, put it back up on the screen.
I don't have it on page 26.
There it is, right there. 26 of the report, right?
The report.
Yeah. Not of the ordinance document. So we can hear from you, Commissioner Saltzman, if you want to further amend your amendment, but frankly, I'm content with it. Again, I'll once more try to soldier back to the big picture here. I believed this area ought to come into the urban renewal area because it's a light rail station area. It's zoned industrial. We were building $1 billion light rail line, and we were behind the curve when I arrived here on both the urban renewal question there, but even more on the planning process, and we've changed the order of work in the Planning and Sustainability Bureau to get the planning and zoning work done around these station areas, not just the one that now might be in an urban renewal area. But this is all still futuristic thinking. I take Ms. Schwab's point and Ms. Pierce's point about, I believe a modicum of affordable housing on this site is appropriate, but how you do that will matter because it's a difficult site. It is next to a freight rail line and a light rail line and a truck corridor and a big, what's now a state highway. So it's not an easy site to figure out, oh, and by the way, we have a Fire Bureau maintenance facility that is still there. So there's a lot of work to do to figure out exactly how this station area turns into a station area where people live and work rather than just only a few of them doing essentially industrial work today. I'm comfortable with making a commitment that there's going to be affordable housing there, but not trying to quantify that because that's trying to see around about 3 or 4 corners at once, and I don't think we can do that.
And can I just clarify from a process standpoint, there will be, in addition to annual budgets, the fact that these properties are city-owned, and so the disposition will go through city council, the disposition of the Fire Bureau property, of the disposition of the Water Bureau property, and you have multiple IGAs, they're going to come before council with regard to any infrastructure investments. And then if there happens to be a development agreement, that'll come through council. So there's going to be probably another, half a dozen different actions that this body will take with regard to the Clinton Triangle. So.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with this language. I think that I'm leery of trying to quantify the unknown at this point. And I think, as you just pointed out, there's going to be several bites at this apple that council's going to have as this site, the Clinton Triangle, redevelops. So I think this is a pretty substantial commitment to say affordable housing is going to be part of this deal.
I'm probably not going to vote for the expansion. I just would like to point out that the language that you have in one instance directs that it will all be affordable housing. The second half of the first sentence says, shall be included in a larger development site that will be developed as affordable housing. Boom, that's it. The first half says there will be a requirement for affordable housing. So if that's okay with you, I just want to make that clear.
Yep, I'm fine.
Okay with that for now. Okay. Any other questions, requests of Patrick and Kimberly while we have them? Okay, so I'll close the hearing on the amendments, and then we'll set all these for second reading and council vote next week.
Thank you.
Regular calendar. Thank you. All right, let's move to the consent item that we pulled, which is 304.
Authorize the acquisition of 2.92 acres of real property on North Crawford for $880,000 to be used for park purposes.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you, Mayor Hales, and I apologize, colleagues. It was my error that we put this on consent because obviously it's a splendid something that I want to celebrate. Before we get started, I have a minor amendment which I'm handing out. And it's a language amendment directed by the City Budget Office, and I certainly appreciate their point that the intent is to say that we're going to request operations and maintenance costs for the property rather than that we are doing so at this time. And that's a very proper request from the City Budget Office. So in the directives in the ordinance, we would be striking in accepting responsibility for the property. The council acknowledges the need to fund the ongoing operations and maintenance cost of this property and directs the Budget Office to add $43,400 to the park's financial year 2015-16 budget, and instead inserting Portland Parks and Recreation has identified $43,400 in ongoing operations and maintenance costs for the property, which will be requested as part of the financial year 2015-16 budget process.
Okay, so Commissioner Fritz moves that amendment.
Second.
Further discussion? Roll call to include the amendment.
Fritz?
Aye.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Novick?
Aye.
Hales?
Aye.
Thank you, colleagues. And there's also a scrivener's error, which we are asking to be corrected, that the System Development Fund is $14,600, not $4,600 on closing.
Okay.
And that doesn't need an amendment.
So noted.
Thank you.
All right.
So with that out of the way, yay, this is really a wonderful acquisition in North Portland in a very parks deficient area. And it's going to provide new service to 477 households in an area of the city that is not particularly affluent, very diverse, and this is an absolutely spectacular property. So thanks to Zelaine Nunn and your team for all of your work on this, and please tell my colleagues and the public about it.
Okay. I'm Zelaine Nunn with Parks, and we're here today to seek your authorization to buy a 2.92 acre parcel that's on the bluff in North Portland, just south of the St. John's Bridge. It's got really amazing views of the city. There's a nice large flat area that will be great for passive recreation use until some future planning is done. There's also some steep banks that will be managed by City Nature. There's also a couple of very large old heritage oak trees that are beautiful. But really our biggest reason for buying this beautiful property is that it fills this service gap. We knew that we had a gap in this area, and like Commissioner Fritz said, this will meet our goal of having everyone in Portland live within a half-mile walk of a park. And like she said, 477 new households will be served, and a total of 798 households are within a half mile. So that's a pretty big fill, actually. It's hard to get that with one property. Anyway, we're excited about this property. It should close in a month or so, and we appreciate your support. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I'm trying to remember this property. I think I've seen it. It's one where D-Pave was doing their work last summer. right?
No, that's a different property.
Different one,
This
sorry.
is
the open-
currently the Open Meadow High School.
Oh,
and
right,
So they're
okay, yeah,
selling
yeah.
it, so it's also helps with the public purpose of providing alternative education.
Yeah, yeah.
Just to note, it has the historic Amos Benson House, but that's located on its own tax lot, and we're not purchasing that. In fact, I think that's currently up for sale. That's another wonderful asset, but we feel we have enough historic houses in the Portland Parks inventory, and so we are not purchasing that.
Correct.
Did a line adjustment to get the park area.
Ah, okay, great, thank you. Other questions for staff? Thank you. Public testimony, which is why I assume why you're here.
Yes, sir. Good morning, or, yeah, afternoon. Good afternoon, Council and Mayor. My name is Stephen Entwistle. I am a member of Individuals for Justice, Healing Man Sanctuary, and a whistleblower for the less fortunate. My concern here is the future of the parks. But before I get that, I just want to mention, Mayor, that I would recommend diglyceride licorice for your cough. I think
Okay,
that would be, that's a natural remedy to get the health food store that works really well. Anyway, I don't know if you're familiar with cable radio. You're familiar with Dennis Bernstein's Flashpoints program. He did an article on the radio here last week on Monday about homeless folks that were in the park smoking, and how the latitude of the law in San Francisco and areas of California, which we're about to adopt, okay, the latitude that the security and the police have for going after people that are smoking is absolutely atrocious and horrible. Okay, we got a gal that had really bad fibromyalgia, and the officers there took her down to the ground and tore her up really bad. Okay, it's on the radio, it's all, you can hear it all, it's on the video and such. But anyway, my caution is future is that's coming here. Okay, we don't have a lot of shootings in the parks right now. We don't have a lot of really bad situations. But I'll tell you what, after this July 1st issue comes out, we will. The only shootings I want in the parks are photographs. So based on this, what's coming down the pike, very concerning, especially to the folks that you, and you utterly despised. You talk about despise, okay. That's what this is about, okay. This is about getting people out of the park, okay. What I want to do is I want to give the parks back to the Native American Indians, okay. Let them manage, let them control the parks. Okay, this is a revolutionary idea, and this would be the first in the United States. But I think that this is long overdue, and this is a good faith move, okay, because what's coming down is not good right now. The way it sits right now, no way. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? All right, it's an emergency ordinance. Let's take a roll call vote, please.
Fritz?
So the money for this purchase is from the system development charges, which is fees paid by developers for new construction. We're not allowed to use that money for maintenance of existing parks. We're only allowed to use it for expanding the system. And this does indeed provide a new park there's a lot of housing construction going on in the St. John's area. And so this is an excellent acquisition, and I commend my team at Parks for continually being on the lookout for properties like this, and also the taxpayers of Portland who are then willing to provide operations and maintenance for them. So thank you very much, Zelene, and your team. Aye.
Saltzman?
Yes, excellent addition to our park system. Aye.
Novick?
Aye.
Hales?
Great addition. Yeah, that's a really nice piece of work. Well done. Aye.
Just before you gavel, I forgot to say thank you to the citizens and the neighbors around there who actually were instrumental in bringing it to our attention.
Great work. Thank you. Aye. Good. All right, let's move on to the remaining regular agenda. starting with item 309.
Extend contract with Xerox State and Local Solutions, Inc. for the red light camera system and increase the not-to-exceed amount by $1 million.
And 310 while you're at it, I think.
Extend contract with Xerox State and Local Solutions, Inc. for the photo radar system and increase the not-to-exceed amount by $3,500,000.
Captain Sheffer's here, along with others from the Bureau, to tell us what we're about here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Mayor, Council.
Kelly Sheffer, Captain with the Portland Police Bureau Traffic Division.
Bob Delgizzi, Portland Police Fiscal Services.
Sergeant David Abrahamson, Traffic Division.
And I'm going to defer to Sergeant Abrahamson.
So Mayor and Council, we're here actually to renew our contract with Xerox State and Local Solutions, who has managed for years our photo enforcement here in Portland. Currently, this is not to exceed amount is $1 million, which the ordinance amends the contract. And additionally, photo radar system and increased not to exceed the amount by $3.5 million. There's absolutely no change in our contract. In this increase, this is actually covering the costs which were in place to the previous contract, which our business manager, Bob Delgizzi, can address better than I can. This has been an effective program. We have addressed community issues from neighborhood associations, from school zones, and from areas where we're receiving calls, both at the Traffic Division and Department of Transportation, to meet and provide a service which has been beneficial to the public.
And it's important to note this is continuing what we do now. It's unrelated to the legislature's discussion about potentially changing the rules about photo radar, but this is to continue our current program under current law.
This is correct, yes.
Was there a new request for proposal issued for both of these programs? And Xerox
This contract
scored
is-
well and won it, or are we, what's the basis under which we're renewing it?
Good question. This contract is being extended and the amount increased within the parameters that Procurement Services has to set up on contracts.
Mhm.
So it has an extension, there's a capacity to do an extension and to increase the dollar amount. And it is, at this point, necessary to increase the dollar amount in order to maintain the operations to the future. When we get to the end of the contract, it would normally be part of a competitive process, but that's a few years out.
Okay, thank you.
So I have some questions on the first ordinance. What kinds of infractions are ticketed and fined with the red light camera? Is it just running the red light, or is it turning right on red, being too far into the crosswalk?
This is actually red light. So if somebody is blowing a red light and it's set for time, and it's captured over a 12-second video. So it's in still format, the vehicle's approaching, you see the violation at the at the intersection, and then you see a final still after they complete and are proceeding through the intersection. So this is specifically for red lights. It's not for speed, it's not for other infractions.
Thank you. What's the difference between the wet film camera and the digital technology, and why do we need to change?
Yeah, and that's just you know, as things have developed, no pun intended, as they progress with our technology, they've gone from the old wet film, which is traditionally how film was processed and developed in hard form, and now it's in digital format, so it can be viewed online, it can be viewed, you know, through via computers instead of having to actually look at a photo in hand.
So are these public records? Could somebody request to get the photographs?
They could, yeah. I mean, they're public records, and sure, these are available to any violator that's actually mailed out with pamphlet and a copy of the violation, so they can actually go online and actually observe this and view it for themselves too.
How long do the records get kept for?
I believe at least 5 years.
And can they be used for other purposes other than the red light blowing?
At this time, we don't. I mean, we really have established good parameters, even my predecessor before me, and currently what we have in place where we don't use these for any other, not even investigations. If an officer wants to call in and say, hey, I think we had a crime at this location, even hit runs, which I oversee too, we still go through a subpoena process in order to get those. So we aren't using those for other issues at this time.
So even your own staff are not allowed to use them for investigations?
At this point, we haven't, no. Yeah.
Good. And I've been told that this is cost neutral. Does this mean that we collect $1 million from these tickets?
Yes, over time, the cost of the program is roughly reimbursed by the revenue that we receive. One of the things that I think is important to understand is how the revenue actually flows. Under Oregon state law, the first $60 of revenue that comes in from a citation that's paid is kept by the state. If there's any fund past that $60, it's split 50-50 between the jurisdiction where the officer has issued the citation and the state. So if there's a $100 citation paid, the state takes the first 60, the remaining 40 is split 50-50, the city would get 20.
Wow. But we still are going to make $1 million over 5 years to repay us for this?
If it was a $100 ticket and we received $20 for every one of them, we would not break even. It would cost money to issue the citations.
So then where does the money come from?
What happens is the citations are written for higher dollar amounts. They can be bargained down, so to speak, in traffic court, and that can happen. And the fines occur across the spectrum from a presumptive fine, which is what you would see when you receive a ticket. There's a maximum that it can be raised to, and then there's a minimum below which it cannot be dropped.
So since this is a renewal, could you get me the information about how, did we make money on this? Did we lose money on this over the previous contract?
Sure, I have some I can provide you.
Thank you. And then on the second ordinance, 310, again, what does the record identifying information do? Is there a standard report for what goes into this record collection?
Maybe you could rephrase that so I understand properly. Are you asking as far as video, or as far as if it's a photo that's?
So this is, again, is to detect speeding violations, right?
This is correct, yeah.
So this is a machine that's driving around and somebody whips past the machine and it takes the pictures again, right? Or
right.
How does that, what in the speeding violation, what's the record that is kept?
So it's actually, again, you have video and you actually have photos on this. And so the photos are kept, and again, these records are kept for many years. And I don't know if, Vince, are you here? Or actually, Vendor's here too. If you want to ask him questions, he could actually probably.
Is there a standard report that's given to Portland Police or to OMF or somebody about?
Yes, and we meet weekly with the vendor.
Okay.
And so we look at citations. There's a process that is lengthy. We could go into greater detail, but it's every single week we meet. If people have, if they have issue with a ticket, then that goes through a process where it's viewed and reviewed. And so I don't know how many years they actually keep the records. I can't tell you how many years they keep the records.
They keep the records, okay. So do we get, again, I'm.
We have access to all these actually to go online to observe offenses.
And is it the same regulation for this camera that they're sealed off from other investigations?
That is correct.
Thank you.
So what, you review all the violations, right?
Officers, yeah, or
Officers
myself,
do? Okay.
yes, correct.
So what percentage of the violations that are issued are people texting or talking on the cell phone in the pictures?
You know, I see a handful that come through every single week, but I wouldn't say it's a large amount.
And do you then
We
ticket
can't
those?
cite for that?
Not currently, no.
Oh, really? I didn't know.
It's just speed, just speed.
Now, if an officer sees them doing it, as opposed to a camera seeing them doing it, we can cite for both violations, right?
This is correct. Yeah.
So if a traffic officer sees somebody going through a red light, talking on their cell phone or texting, they can cite them for both violations. But if it's caught on a red light camera, we can only cite for the red light violation.
Does that matter of state law
true.
or bureau policy?
You would actually have to inject new legislation law for that, I believe.
That is state law,
currently,
yeah,
yeah.
that's
Currently, that we aren't able to do that.
Okay.
Good point. One might think that it would be reasonable to cite for both.
Right.
So maybe the legislature can look at that issue too.
Yeah, definitely not to say distracted driving is an issue, because it is.
Okay, other questions for the Bureau? So some follow-up needed later. Great, thank you all very much. See
Thank
if there's
you.
anyone else who wants to speak on these items.
For the record, my name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice. We hate these red light cameras. We just hate them because they're revenue based. So the cost to run this operation costs about, what, $1 million apparently, because it's a neutral level of taking in monies. So if that's true, then it's very expensive to operate. You create this system where when you look at this, if you're losing money, you're more apt to say, okay, then maybe we should be a little more strict in doing this because we need to generate money. Every time we have a protest in this city, we have 10 times the number of police that you should have. 10 times at least. We have them all lined up. Why not use the police for what the police are supposed to do, and that's to do traffic control. That's what police can do. They do that really well. Instead of having these cameras, there's something very wrong with a civilization that does this, and every city does it. I know that. Doesn't make it right. Somewhere along the line, you have to say, look, if this is revenue neutral, then why are we doing it? If we're not even making a profit on this thing, then why are we doing it?
We're doing it to save lives, Mr. Walsh.
Pardon, sir?
We're doing it to save lives, making people obey.
Save lives. No, you're not.
Yes, we are.
Then you could put a policeman on those areas that have people running red lights. Now, you know
We can't
where
afford to
they're
put a
running.
policeman
Wait,
at every
let
signalized
me finish.
intersection.
Let me finish. You know where they're running red lights. You could put a policeman there, and I'm telling you right now, if a policeman's standing there, nobody's going to run a red light, or very few, or really stupid people. So that's what police officers do. They do traffic control. To do cameras is to spy in the sky, and there's no way to get around it there, Commissioner Novick. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, anyone else? Roll call vote on 309, please.
Fritz?
I appreciate the answers to my question. I look forward to seeing the financial reports. To me, the fact that it is revenue neutral means that we're not just trying to get money, especially now that I learned that we're getting money for the state. That's very nice of us. I do think these are help to promote safety and saving lives in a more cost-effective way than having police officers on every corner. Aye.
Saltzman? Aye. Novick?
This is a very important investment in safety. Aye.
Hales?
Well, we've had entirely too much agreement in this chamber lately, Joe, so I have to tell you, I completely disagree with you. I love these cameras because they do save lives, and we have killed twice as many people every year for the last couple of years with cars as we have through homicides in this city. And that's a typical year for us. So what the traffic division does is really important. And something that I think we have to always remind people, which is that driving a motor vehicle is a privilege. It is not a right. Supervising people in the operation of a privilege, driving a motor vehicle on a public street, it's completely reasonable that we use cameras and radars and other means besides the most expensive and difficult one, which is a police officer trying to supervise traffic operations. Is completely reasonable. So this is a privilege that needs to be regulated. This is a good way to do it. Thank you for good work and continuing this program. Aye. 310, roll call.
Fritz?
Aye.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Novick?
Aye.
Hales?
Aye. Okay, 311. Thanks.
Establish the authority of the Director of the Bureau of Internal Business Services regarding the Portland, Oregon trademark sign and correctly reflect the organizational structure of the Office of Management and Finance.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Here we are again.
Celia Heron with the Office of Management and Finance. This item was heard last week and was delayed, so if there are questions, we're available to answer.
Further questions about this? I know there were some last week.
So the question I raised last week was about the proposed lease transactions being reviewed by this, no longer being reviewed and approved by the city's debt manager. So could you just tell the public why?
Okay, it's not correct to say that they will not be reviewed by the city debt manager. They will. There are the city's debt management policies, FIN 212, which was adopted by council last August, includes a lot of provisions, including the requirement that bureau directors confer and get the approval of the city debt manager on things, including the lease. The the recommendation I made to delete it here is it didn't really belong here and it's incomplete. This section talks about the director's BIB's authorities, and so I was just trying to clean up some incomplete code. But yes, the requirements are there, in fact, much more detail in the city's investment policy.
Terrific, thank you.
Okay, other questions?
Just wanted to note that the Feral Cat Coalition uses a mock-up of the sign with a play in the old language of the sign. It says Spade in Oregon on their website. I hope you will continue to allow them to do that, because it's very cute.
All right, throw the book at them. To quote somebody. All right, roll call, please.
Fritz,
Thank you for your good work on this. Aye.
Saltzman,
Thank you. Aye.
Novick,
Thank you. Aye.
Hales.
Aye, thank you. Okay, 312.
Authorize third issuance of general obligation bonds for fire vehicles and emergency response infrastructure and general obligation refunding bonds.
Roll call, please.
Fritz,
I continue to be really pleased that we made these 15-year bonds, which saved the taxpayers $2 million. Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Novick,
Aye.
Hales.
2 million here, 2 million there, eventually get real money. Aye. 313.
Approve findings and authorize exemptions to competitive bidding requirements, waive performance and payment bonds, authorize an agreement with Rose City Baseball LLC, and authorize Portland Parks and Recreation funding, all in connection with the Walker Stadium at Lentz Park project.
Another great parks project. Commissioner Fritz.
Well, again, we are very excited with this, and this brings some private investment as well as public money in Lentz Park. And so I will turn it over to Zelaine Nunn and also our honored guest, Ken Wilson of Rose City Baseball.
Okay. Well, again, I'm Zelaine Nunn from Parks, and we are excited that we are bringing baseball back to Portland with the help of Ken Wilson here from Rose City Baseball, and he will be the president of the new team, and he has a brief presentation for you, so I'll let him take over.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you all again, Commissioner Novick and Commissioner Saltzman, first time around. What we're doing is, as was pointed out, bringing baseball back to Portland, professional style baseball, real baseball, seats, fans, families, yelling, cheering, Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, maybe a cold beer, some hot dogs, some brats, smoke, barbecue, games, fun, and it's great baseball, and it's going to be in the middle of East Portland in Lentz Park at Walker Stadium. We're really happy after a number of years of working on this that we've been able to put a lot of things together, working with the neighborhood association, working with the Parks Department, and working with our organization. You know, it's a terrific plus for everybody, and we're really happy that it's coming together, and we look forward to playing ball in June of 2016.
Great. Thank you.
I'll just add that this also does make improvements to Walker Stadium. They will be putting about $400,000 worth of improvements in, plus there'll be some additional assistance to redo the field through Parks and PDC. And it will also, the field will, and those improvements will be used by other users when they're not using them.
And this is an urban renewal area, and PDC is going to make an investment in this project.
Absolutely, we're
to make a
happy
better
to partner.
neighborhood.
We're happy to partner, Mayor. We're
What's your
ready
name and
to-
record, Kevin?
Yes, sorry about that. Kevin Cronin, PDC staff, tardy to a city council meeting, trying to time my max ride up to the city council. Yes, so PDC is very excited about this opportunity. Obviously, there's an investment in a park, but even more importantly, as you know, Mayor, we're working diligently and trying to establish some partnerships with 4 development partners in the town center. It's another reason to come to the town center, spend a few hours and spend a few bucks. And so it makes mixed-use development that much easier to do in the town center. So with that, I'll give it back to you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this is going to be catalytic, I think, for everything that you've been working on for quite a while. Other questions for our team here?
Mr. Wilson, I don't eat pork because I saw the movie Babe too many times 20 years ago. Can you promise me there will be all beef hot dogs?
Whatever promise you need, I'm happy to make.
If you cook it, he will buy. Right? All right, any other questions for our team? Thank you very much, and this is a very exciting project.
Thank you.
Anyone want to speak on this item?
No one signed up.
All right, then it's an emergency ordinance. Let's take a roll call.
Fritz?
So this is an exemption to competitive bidding because the Rose City Baseball is investing, and so we don't think nobody else has offered to come and make these kinds of improvements, including concession stands, chairback seating behind home plate, a new scoreboard, a new press box, new concession services, new dugouts, team offices, a new air-graded grass playing field, and a playground and group events area. It's going to be wood bat baseball with college athletes, 30 home games over the summer, and then the rest of the time, little leagues and adult recreational leagues and everybody else will be able to use the new facilities. So it's absolutely the right baseball development for Lentz. It's been very much welcomed when the mayor and I presented this idea along with our partners, Rose City Baseball, at the Rotary Club a couple of weeks ago. Lentz neighbors were there. Also, Nick Christensen has been huge on this. Corapata has also been a great community partner. Todd Lofgren on our park staff has also done a lot of the work in the back and forward, so I appreciate his work as well as Zelaine and the teams. It's really exciting, and it's happening in a wonderful area of the city that deserves really nice facilities. So thank you for your partnership, Mr. Wilson. Aye.
Saltzman?
Yes, it's very exciting. Thank you, Mr. Wilson, for bringing Rose City Baseball to Portland, to Lentz, and look forward to taking in a game or two. Aye.
Novick?
Play ball? Aye.
Hales?
Can't wait. Thank you very much. Aye. Okay, good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Move some dirt out there this summer, right? Okay, item 314.
Authorize a contract with the lowest responsible bidder for the construction of the Bulge Consolidated Conduit Support Project number E09017 for $1,800,000.
Good afternoon. Welcome.
Hello. Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Tammy Cleves with the Bureau of Environmental Services. I'm here with Kurt Robinson, He's our engineer and project manager on this project. And we are here asking for authorization to approve the ordinance for to advertise the $1.8 million Bulge Consolidated Conduit Support Contract. This project is part of the BES Maintenance and Reliability Program, which is approved in our current CIP program. And Kurt has some information to share with you on the project.
Great, thank you.
Yes, good morning, Council. I'll show you a few slides illustrating the major elements of the project, and then we'll field questions. This map shown before you is the location map for the project. As shown, it's in Northwest Portland, located entirely within the Gouds Lake Industrial Area between Nikolai Street and Eon Boulevard. The extent of the project between Nikolai and Eon is along Northwest 30th Avenue, a portion of an industrial street extending to Northwest 29th Avenue and ending at the Eon pump station. The principal purpose of the project is to abandon a large diameter outfall sewer in very poor condition and to construct new pipelines to collect and convey combined sewage to the Bulge Consolidated Conduit completed just a few years ago. This image shown before you is the top of the project looking east along Northwest 30th Avenue. The outfall sewer lying under this industrial area was constructed in 1920 under Bulge Creek or along the Bulge Creek bed in an area known as Gouds Lake. This lake was filled in 1906 with clay gravel conglomerate overlain with silt. After sewer construction, additional fills placed over the sewer, which resulted in significant settlement. This illustration is of the inside of the Gulch sewer, and as you see, the floor of the sewer has given away, and the piles supporting the original sewer construction poked through. This entire area has seen extensive settlement, but we feel we have a solution for it. One is to abandon the sewer in place and construct a new sewer. The work also includes crossing under a BNSF switch, actually 3 switches located in Northwest 30th and Industrial. 2 of the switches are obsolete. 1 switch remains in service, providing service to customers along Industrial Street. At this location, 2 methods were considered. One is tunneling, which is typical near railroads to protect the railroad. In this case, the sewer is shallow, so tunneling proved to be very risky. So a second alternative of open cut was explored. This lower risk option required a restoration agreement with BNSF and was deemed the better solution. The open cut method was selected. The benefits of the open cut include lower sewer construction risk and cost, a railroad grade crossing update, including full restoration of the pavement, removal of 2 substandard railroad switches, improved pedestrian access across the railroad with sidewalks, and in general, fewer impacts to local businesses. That is a shorter duration of construction and no work along easements in front of existing buildings. The BNSF is covering approximately 20% of the cost of this restoration work, and that equates to between $37,000 and $50,000. BES is covering the balance of the crossing restoration work. That agreement between BNSF and the city was approved under Ordinance 186-418, January of last year, for $185,000. Another element of this project was very important, is to protect the CSO tunnel system from flooding in the event of a high stage in the Willamette River. What's happened near the Eon pump station is that this duckbill style flap gate has failed in its relaxed position shown on the right, and the proposal is to replace that with a steel flap gate. Just to illustrate the severity of the problem, shown before you is the weir elevation for the GLI. That's a drop shaft into the Balch conduit. At the weir elevation of 24, the tunnel system is exposed to the Willamette River. That is, if the Willamette reaches a stage above 24 feet, the tunnel will begin to flood with the existing flap gate, or duckbill style gate. So the flap gate shown will protect the tunnel system from flood events. The business impacts will be minimal in this project, although they will be felt in the form of minor traffic delays. We are requesting and specifying the contractor work during normal business hours, so we don't foresee a noise ordinance or night work to complete this project. The improvements that the local businesses will realize will be improved stormwater collection, improvements of the substandard rail crossing, which is in very poor condition, and improved pedestrian access through the area. As a project summary, this project abandons that failing outfall sewer, which speaks for itself. It is a risk and a liability for the city. The construction rehabilitates approximately 1,300 feet of sewer along 30th and 29th Avenue. It works as a partner with BNSF to reduce risk while providing value-added pavement restoration and improved pedestrian access. And finally, it protects the tunnel system from river flooding. As an overview, my estimate of construction is $1.8 million. My level of confidence is optimal. We've done quite a bit of research on the cost. We have good empirical data on what this type of work typically costs. Our contract, if awarded this next month, would be, if the contract is advertised and successfully bid this month, it would be awarded in July of this year, with construction commencing in August. The duration of construction is specified at 8 months. So with that, I'll open to questions. Project
A very necessary project.
Yes, sir.
Wow. Other questions, comments for the team?
Ms. Cleese, I'd just like you to tell the folks at home what's your job.
My job is a supervising engineer for the Bureau of Environmental Services.
That is awesome, and I hope there's lots of little girls who are in STEM education at home watching and thinking, I want to be Tammy Cleese in the future.
Thank you. And it is interesting projects like this, when you see entire pilings,
Yeah, that's weird.
there's a lot of challenges out there and a lot of room for a lot of little girls and little boys to take our places.
So you can abandon that old sewer even in that obviously deteriorated condition and not have to worry about the street later having collapse problems?
That's exactly the point, sir. The point is to drain the sewer of the standing water and then fill with the concrete
Oh, you
material.
will fill the old sewer?
Yes,
Oh,
we
oh,
will.
oh, okay.
Yeah, the abandonment process through our standard construction practices is to fill the sewer with a controlled low-strength material such as
Okay.
concrete.
Yeah, so it's basically a sandy concrete that can
That's
be
right.
pumped down.
CLSM is what we use for this.
Yeah, I was worried about that. It looked like that, there's not much structure left there, so.
That's correct. If unaddressed, it would eventually reach the surface and could result in a collapse.
Yeah, okay, good. That'll be the strongest street in that part of town.
That's right.
Thank you very much. Anyone want to speak on this item? If not, it moves to second reading and adoption next week. Thank you very much. Okay, 3:15.
Authorize sale of land at 815 Northwest Nato Parkway to Union Station B LLC for approximately $8.8 million to be credited to the affordable housing set-aside budget in the downtown waterfront urban renewal area.
Mr. Salzman.
Thank you, Mayor. This item completes a transaction on an agreement made in the 1990s between the Portland Development Commission and GSL Investors, the developers of the yards at Union Station. With this action, the affordable housing set-aside budget for the downtown waterfront urban renewal area will receive almost $9 million from the pre-agreed land sale and an associated loan payoff. And we have Barbara Shaw from PHB to answer any questions if council members have them.
Questions for Barbara?
How many units are currently in this project that are currently affordable?
Well, there's the entire yards at Union Station is a 7-acre parcel, and there's actually four projects on that parcel. In total, there's 621 units with 370 affordable in the overall. The action today is on one of those 4 projects, Yards B, and Yards B has 321 units with 61% of the units affordable at 60% MFI.
And my understanding is that with this is part of the agreement, so we pretty much have to do it. I understand that.
That's
but
correct.
Then those units will no longer be affordable. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. The city's affordable regulatory agreement survives this transaction. Okay. It actually expires in 2027.
So they'll continue to be affordable for
Yes.
that? Okay,
Until
thank
then,
you.
okay. Great. That's good to know. All right, thank you. Thanks very much. Anyone want to speak on this item? Not, it's an emergency ordinance. Roll call, please.
Fritz,
Thank you for being here to explain that. Aye.
Saltzman,
Thank you, and this is $9 million more for the downtown waterfront that can be spent on affordable housing. Aye.
Novick,
Thank you very much. Aye.
Hales.
Thank you. We can use that money. Aye. Okay, 3:16.
Authorize grant application to the Oregon Department of Transportation All Roads Transportation Safety Program for $2.8 million for the transportation safety projects.
Commissioner Novick.
Colleagues, the purpose of this ordinance is to authorize submitting a grant applications to ODOT's All Roads Transportation Safety Program, totaling $2.8 million for competitive transportation safety infrastructure projects. ODOT is receiving increased federal funding, imagine that, for the Highway Safety Improvements Program, HSIP, which funds safety infrastructure projects, and has created a new All Roads Transportation Safety Program for FY 2016 through 21 to focus these additional resources on reducing fatal and serious crashes across the state, regardless of whether they're on local roads or state highways. And this is seriously an emergency ordinance because the application deadline is March 27th. I'm not trying to dump it.
We better not have a long council meeting.
Yeah, waiting for the last minute there.
Hi, my name is Margie Bradway, and I'm the Safety and Active Transportation Division Manager, and with me is Wendy Colley, our lead engineer, another talented female engineer with me at the table today. And yes, it was a very compressed timeline. We had just a little over a month in the way that ODOT set the process up to apply for these funds, and I think Commissioner Novak covered it, but I'll just give you a little bit more background. When MAP 21, the federal bill passed, they created a new program, Highway Safety Improvement Program, which we call HSIP funds. Those HSIP funds are federal funding that flows through the state, and the state DOT, in our case ODOT, has the authority to allocate those funds as they see fit. And so the arts program is the program that was set up by ODOT, and they then sub-allocate to the region. So Region 1 has $10 million available. And just as a reminder, at ODOT Region 1, it includes Multnomah County, Washington County, parts of Clackamas County, and Hood River. And then within the arts program, I know there's a lot of acronyms here, but there's a opportunity for systemic funding. And systemic is really what ODOT is describing, opportunity to do low-cost safety improvements on systemic roadways where we know there's fatalities and serious injuries. 5 million of that is available, and we're asking for your permission to apply for 2.8. And I just want to draw in a couple of things to note here. Also, this funding is spread out over a 5-year period, so they've bundled it 2016 to 2021. So if we were to get the amount that we're asking for, we're really only getting about $560,000 a year. That's assuming we're successful. And I just want to make the distinction between these types of improvements that we're applying for, which are low-cost operational improvements, things like rumble strips, striping, signal timing, is very different than capital projects that are really would, improve the entire street. This is probably the most constrained funding pot that we have. So I just want to give you some good examples of the types of things we're applying for, because we do believe that even though they're low cost, there's going to be good safety benefits. Marine Drive, in the past 5 years, we've seen 9 fatals and serious injuries. That's between 33rd and 185th. We're asking for only $80,000 to do rumble strips for roadway departure, both on the center line and the fog line. And we see quite a bit of road departure on Marine Drive. This is a low-cost improvement that could save lives. Again, another example I'd like to use is Southeast Division between 119th and 136th. We've seen 7 fatalities and serious injuries in the past 5 years. We're asking for $250,000 to improve street lighting at pedestrian crossings to make those more visible. I've got Wendy here who knows the ins and outs of our actual applications if you have any more specific questions.
I just want to clarify, because of the acronym, this is not money for the arts, it's money for, it's money for transportation.
Yeah, absolutely. All roads safety, transportation, yes, program.
Even though it spells that, yes.
Yes.
Right. No, it's great, and you look at the list of projects here, and boy, they're much-needed safety improvements. Really.
Absolutely. There's a lot of overlap between what we call our high crash corridor program and our 10 top high crash corridors and the projects that we're applying for here today.
And on that roadway departure safety, I think that is an innovative approach that ODOT itself is looking at as well. You probably have already talked to the staff there, but they have experienced some challenges with the retrofitting the center line rumble strips. So you already know about that.
We're well aware.
So that's good. So you'll address that and make sure that they know you know about that in the grant application.
Yeah, we've spent a fair amount of time talking about center line rumble strips with ODOT.
And just for my colleagues, I learned this past week that where you retrofit the rumble strips, there's a danger that it could allow seepage into the street and thereby make it less safe. And so it's really great that you are obviously right on top of that, and I will address that in your grant. Thank you.
Good work. Okay, further questions for staff? Thank you both. Anyone want to speak on this item? If not, roll call, please.
Fritz? Great to see a wide variety of projects, including many in East Portland and in Northwest and Southwest, just all over the city. It's nice that you're sharing the opportunities. Aye.
Saltzman.
Good work. I hope we're successful.
Aye.
Novick.
Thank you, Marty and Wendy. Aye.
Hales.
Yeah, because I get the police reports, unfortunately, on my phone. I know some of these streets. I see them often, and I look forward to seeing them less often after we get these safety improvements done. Thank you. Aye. Okay, 317, last item from this morning's agenda.
Increase contract with Tice Electric, Inc. in the amount of $85,251 to execute change order number 1 for construction of a left turn signal from North Fremont Street westbound to North Vancouver Avenue southbound.
Commissioner Novick.
Colleagues, I've always found it unfortunate that we normally wait until after political leaders have passed away to name public structures after them. It is thus with great pleasure that this morning, or actually this afternoon, I recommend to you what will be forever known as the Nick Fish left turn signal. And I turn it over to Andrew Abbey to elaborate.
Not dead yet. He's just away.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And while we're talking about women engineers, I might add that Wendy Colley was instrumental in working on this project. This is yet one more of her accomplishments. Good afternoon. I'm Andrew Abbey, Project Manager for the Vancouver and Cook Project. Just to give you kind of an overview of what you're looking at today, the need for a left turn signal at Fremont Street westbound to Vancouver Avenue southbound is something that's been on PBOT's radar screen for quite a few years, at least as far back as April 2011, where even then, looking back at 2006 traffic counts, we knew that we had a signal warrant to justify a left turn signal. In 2011, our measurements showed that 85% of the over 20,000 vehicles per day entering the Vancouver and Fremont intersection were making a left turn. So that's a pretty dramatic proportion of only 15% of the trips continuing through the intersection. As you know, last year, Commissioner Fish expressed interest in a left turn signal being added, and we checked out all of his concerns regarding traffic safety, and they definitely all checked out. One of the things that we were grappling with is that we didn't have the funding at the time for PBOT to partner to fund the left turn signal. So what has changed is two things. Number one, we had very favorable pricing from the contractor that we've brought on board, not only to put in a new signal at Vancouver and Cook, but also to retrofit the signal at Vancouver and Fremont, upgrade it from span wire to mast arm. They gave us a very favorable pricing proposal to upgrade that, to add a left turn signal. And then we also found some savings in our citywide traffic signal rebuild program, and we didn't identify those savings until last month. And so we've actually been able to identify a funding source for us to pay for this. The Tuesday memo that went out to you, actually dated March 23rd, had testimony in favor of this from the Boise Neighborhood Association and a small business owner, and also TriMet, which has an interest in improving operations on frequent service line number 4 and number 24 Fremont. And I won't read those to you, but you were given those earlier this week. What Carla just passed out is an additional written testimony. We wanted to be very inclusive on this project, and we reached out to traditionally underserved residents of the area, and we got a letter of support from a minority business owner who feels that the left turn signal will improve access to her business. So with that said, I'm hoping council can adopt the amendment dated March 23rd with 3 minor amendments, approve the ordinance as amended, and then approve the ordinance.
So anyone want to speak on this item? Then Commissioner Novick moves the amendments. Is there a
Move the
second?
amendments.
Is there a second? Roll call on the amendments.
Fritz.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Novick.
Aye.
Hales.
Aye. And roll call vote on the emergency ordinance as amended.
Fritz.
Thank you, as always, for your great work, Andrew. Aye.
Thank you.
Saltzman.
On behalf of Commissioner Fish, thank you, and me. Aye.
Novick.
Thank you, Andrew. Aye.
Hales.
Andrew, you get to yes with people on these projects one after another. Keeps making the city better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Aye. And we're adjourned or recessed for 55 minutes. That's it.